You're very forgiving. All right, so I'm gonna actually have to keep track of the stuff I was going to talk about. So let's do that. All right, guys. So while I'm farting away, starting here, and let's get a browser ready for all the guff I'm going to be looking at. Right. So I was kind of, so I went to Reboot Develop Conference, right? So let's just go and have a look at that. I'm hoping there are other people here who won't know me, but you'll soon find out I'm fairly opinionated about these things. I'm not that bothered about. Well, if it's somebody I don't mind offending, then that's not a bad thing. I don't mind doing that, being provocative or just downright silly. But actually, generally, I'm a lovely person. All right. Yeah, so this was Reboot Develop 2017. That's actually the old town in Dubrovnik, but we're actually like, I don't know, 5 miles further down the coast or anything. Right. Diorama reboot confirmed. Right. So anyway, on my... So I've... this is a copy of the conference schedule and stuff. And if I go on Twitter, I can show you. So we went over there. Jodie and I both went over there. We stayed for 3 days. It was... at the hotel or near to where the conference was being hosted, and it's probably the nicest conference I've been to. It was a nice size, very good food, always important. And let's go and see Jodie, because I can show you a picture of what we did afterwards. Because no, Jodie Whittaker, no, that's not at all no. Thanks, Twitter. There we go. We follow each other. Good to know. Rob was at an event hype. Yes, I was. Right, I think. Oh yeah, that's us coming back. There we go. And here's Jodie's got some pictures. So there were a couple of other Creative Assembly guys who went along, so I met them. In fact, I should probably do some name dropping or something at some point. Developer Publisher Relations. Yeah, and that was where our hotel. So basically, it's very, very pretty. And afterwards, we moved down the road to Dubrovnik, the actual old town. Whittaker. Now we all know which music Rob listens to. Jodie Whittaker, Dave Whittaker from Commodore 64 days. And this is us. We actually didn't get the cable car up the top of here. We walked up here, and we're very, very proud. Anyway, so does the internet have more than one streamer? Right. So, opening ceremony. Okay, so let's go through this. So the setup of the conference, 3 days. There were 6 kind of areas where talks could happen, and in a day you'd get sort of like 30 things you could go to. Now I would obviously, I didn't go to any of the audio ones, and I certainly avoided VR where I could. It's Roger Whittaker. That's not the spelling of it. Oh, okay. And actually, you know what? It was very good. It surprised me. I don't know quite why I'm saying that. It's not as if I'm clearly the most intelligent person on the scene. That's just blatantly not true. But I always get a bit twitchy around indie devs. And there was an indie dev showcase, right? So you've got your 6 rooms kind of over here, or 6 locations. But in the central area, which is around where we ate, there was a row of computers, and or many rows, and indie devs were showing their games, and you could talk to them and play. And there's a lot to be said about that, but I'm going to do that at the end because it's the most fun and in a way also harsh. Diorama will have no sound or VR support confirmed. Yeah. Ray March is procrastinating instead of doing exactly what he should do, but I can't really tell him off, can I? Because I do the same. Right. Oh yeah, for the eagle-eyed, I got some more monsters. So that's one of the new ones. Nobody cares. But anyway, I do. I care in my kind of sad way. Right. Indie bashing at the end. Yeah, it's bashing. It's critique. It's both about individual games and also about some of the points raised. But I think some of this will crop up Yeah, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. I'm not going to lay into people needlessly. That's not the fun. I'm not here to poke the bear or do any baiting. So, with that in mind, I'm going to just go through it chronologically on Thursday, which was the opening ceremony with, oh gosh, there's going to be a lot of foreign names I'm going to say wrong. Alan Ladovac from Crow Team. Opening ceremony keynote, game developers' meaning of life, of which I remember very, very little. What I do remember, and this is totally pathetic, let me see if I can get a picture of it. Yes, I can actually. There we go. Right, so you see that. Jodie and I were sat clearly here, and these are scroll texts that were going on, and this was an amazingly crisp, image. And we just couldn't believe it was a screen, and it was so precise and crisp that it wasn't a projector. And in the end, we were convinced that because it wasn't animated, that it was actually a big printed sheet, right? And of course, then it started to animate. Basically, if I become super rich, I want that screen. It turned out it's actually light enough to hang from the gantry, so I thought it was just plastic, but actually it's tiny, loads of tiny connected LCD screens, which was amazing. Unbelievable. Right, so enough of that waffle. And it was by a guy from Crow Team, one of the top guys, CTO or something like that. CEO, I'll probably get it wrong and someone will tell me off. And it started off, so Crow Team clearly, and I'll discuss this later, Crow Team clearly do like VR, right? And you guys all know that clearly I don't like VR. Or at least I don't like. I don't think its time has yet come, which is the accurate representation. Because I love VR and I love the future possibilities of it, but we're not there yet. So having the camera there means I'm not looking at it. That's a bit freaky. Oh, okay, all right. We'll try and do this. All right, and. He was talking about the possibilities and the excitement from VR and talking about how it enables all this stuff. And I was obviously, if you've heard me before, you'll know that I was kind of waffling about to Jodie about it's got problems. VR has a problem, right? And quite a few of the other talks were about VR, and sometimes I even ended up in talks that went into VR. So I'll probably, on my list of topics, I've got VR at the end. But just to start off the VR problem was this guy showed, to show how effective VR, he showed a clip of Ronnie O'Sullivan. In fact, let's even try and find this online and see if you can spot the problem. Oh, this is going to show my lack of memory on how these things work. So, right, VR Ronnie O'Sullivan. Where is it? Ronnie O'Sullivan failing big time at this virtual reality game. Right. Right, that's the exact clip they showed, right? And that was kind of spot the problem. Hello, X-Force. All right there, man. So what they've got is Ronnie O'Sullivan, a very well-known snooker player, one of the kind of best ever. And he's got VR on playing pool, and he's hilariously tried to put his body weight onto the pool table that doesn't exist, and he's fallen over. And kind of people laughed, and I didn't, because I have no sense of humour. No, that's partially true. It was to do with the fact that they were highlighting the benefits of VR with a clip that I thought showed exactly the problem with VR, right? I mean, take that clip. That's Ronnie O'Sullivan, who probably earns several million a year. And if he'd fallen badly, that VR demo could have ended his career, right? It could have damaged his hands, his wrist. He could have hurt his back. And, it was an interesting point, because I was looking at Jodie again. That's just proof, like, who would have got sued if he hadn't fooled this off? Now, I'm not doing diorama. I think you know that. Actually, at the end of the stream, in X number of hours, I'll come back and I'll go, ta-da! It now looks like Twitter. Right. So I was off to a sort of head scratching start. But anyway, let's go over to the first of the actual panels that I went to, which was by a guy called Ralph Fulton. So let's actually try and find these people out as we go along. All right. So he's from Playground Games. So Playground Games makes the Forza Horizon series. There we go. And so you may know, and the talk was titled, "You Never Get a Chance to Make a First Impression." Now, I was concerned this was going to turn into a talk about when you release your game, you've got to go all in for marketing and stuff. So I went in with some trepidation because I don't believe that that's true. But it actually turned into be something far more interesting. So Forza Horizon 3 opening. Not opening song. So let's have a look. And basically what this was saying, and if you go, oh, it's common sense, I think you are pessimist about VR problem. Well, a lot of people do. I think I'm generally on my own about that one, but I'll be talking about VR a little bit later. I think what it boils down to is I think VR is not a win-win at the moment, right? And the time will come in the future when it's going to be a win-win, but for now it's just not. So just say words like entity controller every 5 minutes. Yes. So this, I think this is going to be, I'll soon know when it started. So the game starts on Xbox with FMV and then all of this junk, and then you take over, right? So this is the very first thing. I don't think there's even an options screen or a title screen. I genuinely think this is just what it starts. And suddenly you're controlling the game and it's showing how to do it. And they showed how they white boxed a level and found out like interesting landmarks to add in. But the main point of what this talk was about, which is you never get a chance to make a first impression, was they front load the cool stuff in their game, right? So they have a very big focus on what happens in the first 10 minutes of someone playing a game, right? So there's no title screen, there's no options screen. It just has an FMV. So why does that have an FMV instead of coming into here? Well, partly because of there's technical constraints on the Xbox, which somehow means that you can play an FMV and then load the game, and it feels like the game's already interactive because you've got FMV playing, versus if you just paused, the earliest you can play an FMV is earlier than the earliest you can play playable game, right? So that's what they did. And there were some interesting sort of anecdotes about how they, during development, they made this course. So look at this bit, right? There you go. The car that the player is controlling has just changed from their marquee car, which is one of those, into this 4x4. And the reason was that they had, during development, they were reusing the marquee car from Forza Horizon 2, which it turns out was a lot slower than the marquee car from Forza 3 when they finally decided on it. So they'd created all this area with this grit and stuff, and then they found that the new car, when it went in close towards the end of development, was like, oh my god, it's unplayable. So they quickly had the changing cars and all that. And apparently you're going to get this really nice bit where you go onto the beach, and it's a famous landmark in Australia. And they had to fiddle with the time of day, and they couldn't quite get all the effects to match with the mock-ups that the artists had done. But the key point here is the first 10 minutes is actually pretty damn awesome. The idea being is if you can't hook people in the first 10 minutes, or you don't attempt to, why should you assume they're going to play the next 10 minutes? Why are they going to play the 10 minutes after that? And it was very, very interesting, right? They went super lean on everything, and hopefully we'll see some interesting things once they get to the finish line. Oh, Teasel. Right, so I won't bore you with the story of Forza Horizon, but it's a big event that moves around the world, and here they are. Thanks, Kat. And then it cuts, I assume. That was the Teasel. And now we're back to FMV. Yeah, I played Forza Horizon on the 360, and I was very impressed. Surprisingly impressed. And what's interesting here is that they go through this whole intro. Hopefully it's not going to take too much longer. Yeah, I'll skip a bit. And look what they do now, right? Now you get to select your character, right? Which is really interesting, right? Because loading all these models has a cost, but they're hiding it behind the FMV. But if you'd waited to have this interactivity, like a traditional person or a traditional game would have the options menus first, you would end up taking longer to get into the game, which is pretty interesting. And then the FMVs, well, these are rendered real time, and obviously your character's changed now, so you've now got your player character you've picked. But hello Flint still, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. And they went overboard on this, but to me the lesson has really stuck, not just because of let's plays and stuff, but if you can't hook a player in 10 minutes of playing your game, regardless of whether they've paid for it or it's a demo or anything like that, you know, why should they persevere? Because the game gets better later on? That's an unsafe bet to put a customer through. Yet Doom from last year uses that method of getting into gameplay as fast as possible as well, and I think it works quite well. I do as well. It involves generally planning for it quite early in development. But when I come back later to talk about the indie games, one of the things that they do is, and this was commonplace, like half the games at least demoed really badly. Not just because the type of game, but the little things that they didn't do. And this, you know, you don't have to go this far. Oh yeah, that's right. Look at this for that you're still in the first 10 minutes of the game. So that was your first race, and now you're chasing a helicopter that's dangling a car. So that other car is getting a head start, right? Pretty ridiculous. Also because you've recently seen how it works in Staxel. Well, actually, Staxel is going in the right direction, but it's nowhere near as fluid and as accessible a start as this. And I'm not really, you know, to be this smooth is going to be expensive, right? Anyway, I thought this was excellent, and especially when you compare it to the games on display. One of the funny things, and I'll just talk about it quickly, was a lot of the demo games that I played at the Indie Showcase, the devs would come over as soon as I picked up the controller and started telling me, oh, it's about this, you've got to play this, you've got to do this and do that. And I'm like, you know, in a polite way, I'd say, don't tell me that. Let me find it out. I actually want to know how accessible this is, right? I don't want you to tell me, oh, that bit's broken. I can make assumptions on what isn't working. But really, I was thinking, oh, what effort have they put in? So, oh, I'm still hearing my own voice in the background. Oops. What have I done? Sorry, guys. That's better. Right. And anyway, so that was the kind of first one. So well done, Playground Games. Right. Next one. Who knows the company Almost Human? Not that one. Okay, let's try the other search. Legend of Grimrock. Right. So this talk was called Full Spectrum Indie, How to Wear Many Hats. Right. So I'm going to talk about... let's have a look. Right, Legend of Grimrock. You may or may not know this. But what if my menus are more exciting than the game? Eek. So let's go and mute that. But we'll have Grimrock in the background. So I have no idea if this isn't about the first 10 minutes. Maybe the first 10 minutes are terrible, but it's got nice art. That's kind of cool. But yeah, this guy, and I'm going to pronounce his name wrong because it's Antipavo Palervo Tionon. So I'm going to type that in because he at least deserves the dignity. And Tionon. That's his name. Almost Human, devs of Legend of Grimrock. All right. Yeah, it's in the style of Dungeon Master. So if I was to take away like one or two sentences from, you know, if I had to condense the wisdom or the sound bites from the entire week, 3 days, probably one of them would be what this guy said. So he was a really nice guy, and they set out, they're all fairly experienced devs, but what they did was they set out to make a game, an indie game, very, very quickly. So here's a question to you guys. If you were starting from a blank slate, and what would you do to encourage the game to be developed quick? right? What do you think would be important to think about, right? High on your list of let's not make something massive, right? Is it to do with tech? Is it to do with sloppy coding? Yeah, bad coding won't help. So these guys are all pretty experienced. And I'll come back to that just in case anybody else has any other. Use Unity. Graphics is not everything. Really, best example is To the Moon, pixel graphics, but a story that touches your heart. Yeah, that sounds good. So I'm going to talk about what he was and then come back to that, because it's like the bit that blew me over, as in the stuff that I espouse on my channel, they did. And they were far more successful than I could have imagined. Anyway, so let's try and get his name, Antti, if that's his name, Eek. And very, very cool guy. Looked a bit like speaking to people props wasn't his most favourite thing, but he came across really, really well. Very warm and just gets things done. And it was about like when you're in a small indie team, right, and you've got like 10 different roles, it's not just art, design and coding. Clearly not. He's kind of a coder slash artist slash producer slash biz dev. And that was what his talk was about, was like how did he end up and how did he manage dealing with all of these other roles to make the company tick? And what I took from it was that he clearly is a very hard worker and they were committed. Hello, Vortex. And it looks like PlayStation 1 movement. Well, exactly. I mean, that's it's Dungeon Master style. So you're moving in unit squares. And let me fast forward it to see if it... So, right. Here we go, guys. Keep an eye out. Did you see that? I did. I'm so trained to spot these things that this very brief rotation... There we go. There you go. Do you see that? That's a rock that looks different to everywhere else. So that's a secret button I'm almost sure that you can press, because that's what happens in these styles of games. Yeah, and you know, and I'm kind of reaching the point where he just casually dropped. He said the game overran by about, in its development time, by about 40% or something. Well, I actually calculated the 40% because I questioned him about it at the end. But they made Legend of Grimrock with 3 people in 10 months. And they'd originally planned to do it in 6 months. So in terms of a planning thing, it was a failure. But in terms of, you know, I'm looking at this, and this game and its sequel have sold 1.2 million copies, something like that. In fact, let's go and do the old Steam Spy stuff. We like that, don't we? Yeah, we do. Right, Legend of Grimrock. So this is probably going to have like 500,000 or something. Legend of Grimrock. And 1 million copies, the first one, and 380,000 the second one. That's fantastic, isn't it? So, and about 14 things. So for 3 people for 10 months, let's do 40% over on this time. And well, exactly, but it's such a short development period that percentages become less meaningful. Time to extrapolate how rich they are based on Steam Spy, yeah. And so I'm going to send him a begging letter, guys. So let's assume that they only get 1/3 of that, but that's still not. I mean, what am I talking about? That's ridiculous. It's just 5 million, right? Divided by 3, divided by 10 times 12. So no, that can't be right. Yeah. Okay, so they were working. Each of them was working on a yearly salary of $2 million, right? That's pretty darn good. Legend of Grimrock 2 clearly seems not to have sold quite as well. I wonder if they've done anything else, because I'm not sure they're working on... Yeah, so we asked him what he was working on now, and it sounds like something else. So it makes me think that the guys probably don't want to work together, or they're taking a break, or because they've got so much money. So Legend of Grimrock 2, I think... yeah, that's right. It has different styles of scenery. It's still going to be block-based, I'm pretty sure. But... gosh, that's starting to look really nice. Yeah. Copies times price times 0.1. I don't think it's only 10%. I think that's too low, Bartrey. Rob the guy who started Diorama. No, this is me recovering from my nice thingy, my nice time away. Yeah, the fact that they're still in the grid stuff, but they've got these other sort of just miscellaneous graphics is really nice. But it didn't sell as much, probably because a lot of people have the nostalgia for the old games. And actually, they're bloody hard, right? They're really hard. Anyway. Yeah, so it went through the whole thing, and at the end of it, because I'm one of those awkward people that tends to try and ask difficult questions, right? So he talked all through the game and how they'd all manage these things, and I asked right at the end. So I'm saying, like, what do you think was the biggest contributor for you to be able to bring in a game in 10 months, which actually is spectacular, right? That's really, really good. A game that's this good and has sold this many. Yeah, it was in Croatia. Yep. And normal one, everything is pirated anyway. Cost isn't really a big deal. I'm not sure it's meaningful. And I said, how much was the game design a contributor to the fast development time? And just to make me smug and happy, based on that question I asked you earlier, what do you think might have helped it? He was saying, well, the game design was a massive help, critical help to develop the game quick, because basically they were copying a game because what they'd done is they had a soft spot for Dungeon Master, and so if we go back to Dungeon Master Atari ST, for example, so this is the game that they were aping, for those of you that don't know it, and oh yeah, that's where you choose your characters. And yeah, and you move around and yeah, pick up stuff. But no one had really done it for a long time. So they basically deliberately picked a game that they liked. That was important. But it was a game that hadn't been remade for a long time. There was a potential gap in the market. And it meant two things. One, that the game that they chose, technically, is actually quite light. But the game design, they already know about it. So they wanted to make an updated Dungeon Master and throw some extra things in. And the net result is... oh, sorry, Bartwee, I see what you're saying. How much did each person get? Yeah, I see what you mean. Sorry. And what else was there? Nightmare, Atari ST. Oh, let's do Amiga because it might look a bit nicer. Yeah, and there was this game as well, which actually had a tiny bit better graphics. But as you can see, they're all a bit ropey compared to Legend of Grimrock. Yeah, so they made, and I didn't ask specifically how much the game design that they chose, was an achievable short game really high on their agenda, or did they end up doing this game because it was one of a contributing series of reasons? And I suspect the fact that they knew exactly what they were doing and it was quite limited in technology, which still, they still overran. But the big lesson I took from it was that these guys made a really smart decision about the game they wanted to make, right? And they didn't compromise kind of artistic vision or anything like that necessarily. But the idea of failing fast, a 10-month development for 3 people, when you compare that to all the other indie games who were there that reached nothing like the quality, it's unbelievable. And the other takeaway from it is that they only hired the 3 of them were really experienced, right? And I've kind of, my personal opinion is if I ever hire anyone, they'll have to be provably already excellent at their job. I have no interest as a small dev in training anyone. That's just me, right? But to be blunt, I think there are quite a few bits of evidence to sort of show that hiring, on a small budget, you have to run a tight ship, right? There you go. So this guy, I tried to find him on Twitter. I don't think I succeeded. Let's go and have a look. Let's see if we can find him. Twitter. Almost Human Games. No. And I don't know how to. Don't know if I type this guy's name in. Antipavo Pelervo. Oh, this is terrible. Tihonen. I don't even know if nothing came up. Okay, so he probably doesn't have his own one. Nope, I can't be bothered to find out. Anyway, net result from Full Spectrum Indie, How to Wear Many Hats is, make sure the people you work with know what they're doing if you've got a small budget. And it is absolutely possible to to pick a game style that is very narrow in scope and you know the limits of it and still have fun and still make a game that stands out. That's good. Yeah. Well, I'm saying they made, several $1 million from it. So well done them. Right. So the next one I went to was called, it was a panel called Building Communities Equals Your Best Marketing Strategy. Now, I need to go and find the guys for this. One thing is, it was moderated by a woman called Becky Taylor, who I happened to bump into on the flight back as well today. So the poor woman ended up with me berating her a second. I didn't berate her, but one of the themes here was that in several of the panels was influencers, right? Do you guys know what the influencers are? Do you know what that means? While I do that, I'm going to look up these people. So Becky Taylor, Twitter. To be honest, this isn't really, that's not going to help, is it? It might be this lady. Yep, it is. I recognize her. So GameSite.io. So she was the moderator for this. And GameSite.io, in case you didn't know it. And the next one I went to is Diorama. No, that's not going to happen. So influencer marketing. Right. So this is the kind of dreaded topic of YouTubers and Twitch streamers and Let's Plays and all that kind of stuff. But they were talking about the building communities. And she was moderating. And I do want to quickly try and find the other guys. Oh, okay. So he's from Riot Games. Head of Communications at Remedy. Yes. Yep, that makes sense. Right, so we had him, and he's... I'm just trying to remember. There was a guy from... This is the guy from Crow Team. So this was another of the panels where I kind of had quite a chat with the people afterwards. Because my opinion of influencers is that I thought the jury was out on their effectiveness, right? I will be doing my game. Crikey. Crow Team. Let's have a look. What? Oh, it's I've gone and spelled his name wrong. Was it this guy? Yeah, I think it was. He's just typed meow. Oh, well, I like him then. Quick, do a scan and see if he's... Oh, he hasn't actually printed much of. Okay, so he's a producer. Okay, fair enough. And anyway, so some of it was very interesting because the talk was supposed to be about building communities equals your best marketing strategy. But one of the highlights was being told that actually, building a community is not the same as marketing, is not the same as retention, is not the same as business development, right? And so I can't even remember all of the words, but it was interesting in that a lot of us in the audience, I'm guessing, but even the guys at the front, when they were talking about building a community, they were totally mixing and matching marketing and community building and that. And it basically shows that it's not a very mature area. And there are several other signs to that, right? So some of the signs is the vast disparity in how much you pay to work with particular streamers. Are they good for your product? Are they mature? Do they run their streams and their YouTube channels as a business? Just horrible, right? And so there's a rise of a couple of companies which now allow you to deal with these influencers. And it gets a bit weird, right? Because I talked to Becky later on the plane today and I got some better figures, but there were kind of, what we had on the panel was, I think Thomas Poor, who everybody on the panel was asked, how much have you spent on influencers? And one of them, I think the Crow Team guy was saying, yeah, we sort of spent, I don't know, £5,000 or something like that. And and it kind of worked, but it was hard to track and all that sort of things. And did he mention how important memes were? No, sorry. Total random stuff. I've always liked you. Did you ask about the Talos principle too? Yes, I did actually, but I'll get to that in a second. And one of the things they were talking about, actually, the Crow Team guy, this was another opportunity for them to talk about VR, because there's a problem in presenting VR, right? VR does not present well, and there are augmented reality ways of showing it, but well, only 5K for a company that size is tame. It is, but the specific reason he said, was that they have no guarantees, and he gave a hilarious kind of anecdote of they'd spoken to one of these enablers, these go-between companies, that said, if you give us £1,000, we guarantee to multiply that money by 10, right? So if you put in £1,000, you'll get 10 grand out, and their cut is like £600 or something. Or something like you pay £600 for them to do that for you, to invest that £1,000, right? And the guy said, look, if you're offering me such crazy returns, how about we do this? I don't pay you any money, and if you hit that target you've just told me, I'll give you double the amount you're asking for originally, right? And they never called him back, sort of thing. And it highlights what I spotted amongst various talks, which is there's a lot of figures being bandied around for just how effective influencer marketing spend is. What is the return on investment? And they look crazy. They genuinely look insane. So one of the talks that I went to a bit later for Cellent, they were sort of showing figures of like you'd get 10 times your investment, and it was a bit ridiculous, because it simply can't be true. It can't be true that there are these crazy kind of returns, because and some of them are guaranteeing you'll get your return or your initial investment back in 2 days, right? And it's like, but so you're telling me I could make a game and then in the first week invest with one guy, and the second week reinvest all those earnings back into another guy, and then a third guy, and fourth, you'd be a millionaire at the end of a month, and it clearly doesn't stand up to like even common sense scrutiny. I had a call with a PR company this week, and it was all pay us and we'll send emails to our contacts. Yeah, well, that's even worse. I mean, in all fairness, these companies at least are going to get you the airtime. Whether it's effective airtime or not is another matter, right? So these guys, the business model seems not to be pay us and we'll see about trying to convince influencers to stream your game. This was a very direct, you pay us and some of that money goes to the influencer and some of that goes to us, but you will get your coverage. And then it comes down to choices about what's the right streamer, how much coverage do you actually want, and stuff like that. 3 months ago, I unfollowed just to have a follow age of 3 seconds. That's a very weird thing to do. And but even so, there seems to be this kind of accountability. There's a couple of things that worry me. One was to do with click-through attribution. So the idea being is that the YouTube guy will play your game, he'll put a link in, and they can track it and make some guesses, and you'll see a spike in sales and stuff, and suddenly everyone's really, really rich. Now, a couple of things that stick in the throat is that, like, you do hear stories about these people, how much money they're charging, right? Do I really want to give a YouTuber 10 grand of my money to try to play my game for an hour or two? And you're like, no, they're talentless gits, which is a bit unfair. But there's a sort of something that doesn't quite add up in reality, right? That, like there's people all over the shop with 1 million viewers and all of this, and it's not necessarily meaningful. And kind of, for me personally, I guess I am resentful. That's just me being totally blunt, right? Rob, you should have marketed yourself as an influencer and make money. Guys, I can't even convince you to shut up about diorama for an evening. I can't influence you to do anything, right? Please buy Monster Hunter figures. Look, they're beautiful. Look, buy them. Whoa. No, that's too much like a teasel party. Why have I got a spare monster? I didn't realise that. Joni must have put that up the other day. It now bugs me. Right. How much do they cost? Well, I'll tell you what, I'll roll in a discussion about influencers, because there was another one later on, called Launching Steam and Mobile Top Grossing Games Case Studies by Ivan Tranchik, don't know, from Cellence. So let's go and find, so let's have a look at some of these websites, right? So to give you some, making mobile games grow. Oh, that was making mobile games. Eek. Right. And game site. All right. So influencer marketing is hard. You know how important it is, but with so many moving parts, it can be a headache to deal with. Well, I mean, that was, in fact, I think in every single talk I went to that was small, like less than a few hundred people, I asked questions. And one of the question I asked this panel, right, and I got some very good answers because I'm a git and I make sure I get them. So I basically said, look, if I'm an Indian, I've got $25,000 to spend, all right. We've talked about the influencers and this is and building a community is good, right? But how does it compare to other forms of investment? And I stupidly muddied the waters by saying, like, I could spend 25 grand on a billboard ad, a newspaper ad, or whatever. And there are fairly accurate models for, it's a known industry, it's a known advertising revenue, and you can kind of get figures for how effective these are. Not that they're easier to track, it's just there's years of information and years of studying of these things. A print ad might cost you 5 grand. It will hit this many people. It will have an impact of this, assuming you've targeted your demographics correctly, right? Apropos, stuff like this. Is it really important for game devs companies to sell them? Do we mean... Rob's so effective at marketing diorama but not showing diorama. Is it important for game dev companies to sell them? Do we mean sell games? Oh, Teasel's probably with Jodie, because Teasel's obviously been Rob and Jodie free for a week now. She's been very, very nice. Very, very nice. Anyway, and they answered, and they sort of said, oh, well, compared to other types of marketing, like print ads are dying. Nobody really wants to advertise in printed press, and nobody really wants to advertise. Like one of the anecdotes from the guys was that they paid for adverts around the edge of Rock, Paper, Shotgun, and they saw no return for it. And rather hilariously telling, the moderator, Becky Taylor, who works for this company, said, yeah, it's pointless. Even I run with ad blockers, right? And the general consensus is that like 50% of people visiting game sites have got ad blockers, right? Excellent, right. But I then corrected myself because I said, no, what I actually meant and failed to say was if I had 25 grand to spend, right, why should I spend it on paying for influencer marketing? Why wouldn't I spend it on a member of staff to look after community management for a year? Why wouldn't I spend it on extra programming resources to get an extra few levels out of it? Do you understand? Like 25 grand, which I could apply anywhere in the company. How can you convince me to spend it on influencers that gives a better return on investment versus anything else that might improve the quality or some other form of traction of the game? And how many shirts did you stitch together to make that shirt? Is it done with procedural messages? No, apparently it actually says something. Jodie read it for the first time, so there's words there. So I've only just thought about it, but this shirt, it's made up of Pirates shirts. And I think Uncharted 5 is going to be based around the hunt for this shirt because it has a bit of a treasure map on it. So here's hoping I get gutted in Uncharted 5, but it'll look beautiful. So very realistic death cries, and Teaser will sit on my still warm body thinking everything's fine. And 25 grand for meme manager, do it. And and I'll tell you what, the answers were pretty telling. So first of all, the other guys sort of said they didn't have a strong answer for it, right? Because they weren't ultimately that convinced themselves. So they had anecdotes of how they'd reached out to influencers. And there was a very good story of the Remedy guy, because Becky had asked them how much they've spent on influencers and YouTube marketing and stuff like that. Notice that this conversation, this panel didn't really talk about building communities. Certainly not the last half. It was about YouTube influencers. And he had an anecdote where there was a big a big YouTube streamer in Brazil, I think it was, contacted them and says, look, if you do a Spanish, I think it's Spanish or Portuguese, probably Spanish, a Spanish translation of the game for me, for us, for our territory, I'll play the game and I'll get you loads of millions. And the guy said that's the biggest spike they've ever had. Like, the game just went mental, went crazy, because this guy was as good as his word. So they got another market out of it and a translation, probably from the fans or something, and it went crazy. This guy did really well, but they spent nothing for it. This guy was just such a fan of the game. And another one said, like the biggest spike they've ever seen from anything that's happened online was viral. I think it was not King with Candy Crush, but some game like that, where it just happened on a TV show one morning, a breakfast TV show. They said, oh, and we're playing this game, rah, 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 and it caused a massive spike. But these were all kind of viral and accidental things, and they didn't have a single good anecdote about using influencers, paid influencers, or going via one of these broker firms. But Becky Taylor, and the reason I keep knowing her name is because I'm going to email her. I asked her for figures. I said, how can you prove that the money is well spent here? And I said, as far as I'm concerned, nobody knows these figures. And she said, well, it's funny you should say that, because she'd just done a presentation, I don't know, a few months ago. And the presentation was exactly about that. How could they attribute return on investment? And she said she genuinely got some figures, but she didn't have them on her. So I'm going to email her and get those figures, and we'll discuss them. But what was more interesting was was talking to her today when these kind of companies were saying, you get 10 times your investment back, and she was being very, very fair and open and honest about it. And she said, well, you don't get 10 times your investment back. You might get 10% your investment back. We're talking lower Rob Nail Staxel marketing scheme. Oh, okay. And so Staxel's releasing in Brazil first. Excellent. And she was saying, like, the returns are much lower, and I was like, well, that sounds far too risky. I mean, it's not actually. If there's a 10% return on investment in a short period of time, like a couple of weeks or a month, that's actually pretty good. You wouldn't get any kind of return on investment in banking or anything like that. No way. But then the conversation started talking about ways of paying for this. So, for example, what are the ways that you might pay for this? Well, you could do something crazy like go and give somebody $5,000. And that's one way of doing it. Or you could... the one that appeals to me is cost per install. So you sort of negotiate, or they negotiate on your part with the streamer, and they say, okay, for every game that is directly attributable to my stream, I will get a pound, right? So if the game is £10 to buy, they'll get £1, or maybe someone else was saying it might be as high as like they'll get £6 of the game. At which point I started, feel physically vomit like. Total random stuff. All right, see you later. See you, dude. No, I'm not doing diorama today. No, I'm gonna get all of this out of my system, and then never speak of it ever again. So cost per install is the one that's very interesting, and it's it's something that I feel is tangible and you can have more control over. Like if your game's coming out at £60, right, to give a streamer £6 of that when your cut of it might be 20 or whatever it is. Actually, that doesn't seem unreasonable. And it's, I'm not sure the order in which this money goes through, because obviously any money you receive from sales comes through at the discretion of the platform you're selling on. But how soon you have to pay the streamer, to be honest, I'd reckon hoping to go viral is part of influencer strategy, and those hits even out all the misses in terms of ROI. Are there any plans for diorama streams in the near future? Yes, yeah. Probably next week onwards, 2 or 3 days a week. Yes, I'm coming back to it. Yeah, normal months source control strategy to the rescue there. And to make things even better is like sometimes you can negotiate a cap, right? So you might say, for the first 200 games of mine that are attributed to your channel, you'll get 20% of the profit But after that, nothing, right? And so actually the conversation, even in my weak business brain, started to feel like, do you know what? There could be a path with decent there could be a path with decent influencer management and stuff. What was interesting was Cellence, right? These guys, right? So these have got a whole heap of things, and it looks, I didn't realize, but it looks like it's mobile only. And I want to see if they've got an image that they showed us. So it was almost like they showed a web page that was almost like Tinder, right? Where they had pages, and each little picture, it was like a card, a playing card or a trading card. And it had the name of the streamer and a picture of the streamer, and it had how much they were expecting to pay and their reach and the projected return on investment. And these cards were ridiculous. Maybe it was just a mock-up. Hello, Teasel. You come and say hello? Come and say hello, little cat. Guys, it's a Teasel's here. Teasel's coming. And I use Git offline. There she is. This is my three-legged cat, everyone. Dreamies. No, she's got normal food this time of night. Oh, we missed you so much, little cat. Oh, well, there goes the end. That's the end of the stream for me, right? Because we'll just be looking at the cat. Hello, say hello. Oh, she's doing a little purr. What a good cat. Yeah, she's lovely. I'm a git. What? And, oh, Shmuel Joke said something. Message deleted. Oh, missed it. Hello, tripod. Yeah. So, I've forgotten what I was saying. Yeah, so it had all these cards, and this was crazy. Like this is where they were saying, they were adding to this myth that you could get 10 times your return. And I was like, this is crazy. I mean, this talk was supposed to be about, which one was it? Let's go and have a look. Thanks, Teaser. It was launching Steam and mobile top grossing games, but it actually ended up being an advertisement for the company of the person that was doing the talk. So there wasn't a great deal of information. Then it was a bit of a sell of their product. And I just, that kind of stuff winds me up anyway. But they still talked about analytics of games and stuff. Didn't tell me anything I didn't know. And then they showed these pages where it's saying this streamer might cost you 500 quid, but you'll make back 10 times your investment. And I just thought, right, anybody promising that sort of stuff is just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. There's no right. Don't sit on that. So I will be emailing Becky Taylor to get some of these figures. And I'll tell you what, I'm actually interested in it now. Because there are ways of limiting risk. Like, you can, presumably the deal is you can either spend more with a streamer for an upfront cost, or did they promise up to 10%? No, they were saying there were no promises. But the point is that if you do a cost per install, right, then actually that's zero risk. It's just that you'll probably have to pay a higher percentage of each game sold, right? But I'm okay with that. You can experiment with it. I quite like that. Anyway, so the next one was a lady called Anya Coombs, which was, she works for Kickstarter. Right, so let's go and have a look at Kickstarter. Some of you may know Kickstarter. And the takeoff, and I didn't ask the guy doing Cellence because that was a really big talk, but the beachside chat with these guys, I was like, how does any of this fit into the indies and stuff? And that's when they started talking about community management again, like building your community. But they stopped talking about influencers, other than to say, well, you might as well email them because we don't have 10 grand to spend on a campaign. That's ridiculous. Anyway, Kickstarter, interesting, right? So explore. We've got, are you all right, Kat? I don't know how many categories there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever. 15 categories or something like that. Is it kind of like Indiegogo? And I'm trying to remember what she was saying, because to be honest, once again, what people were offering in talks wasn't what I really was interested in. I had my own agenda and own questions to ask, right? So they were talking about Kickstarter, and there were some very interesting takeaways. Like even if a project looks like it's not going to reach its target, don't pull it. Keep going till the end. Are there ways that you can hassle Kickstarter to promote your game? Not really. But there was some interesting stuff that I talked to Anya afterwards again, and I asked, what was the? Oh yeah, I asked a question that made in the panel. It wasn't just Anya, but I can't remember who else was there. Where they kind of paused and got like, difficult question. So the question for me was that Kickstarter for games, right, seems to have, it's kind of past its peak, right? You know, like any new technology or any new marketing thing comes in with, there's a splash, there's a earlier adopter advantage, right? But that's not the case with Kickstarter. We've kind of seen it ups and downs, and we've been burnt by it, and things like Star Citizen like burn the whole thing, and we see Kickstarter abused, or it feels morally abused, but it's not actually breaking terms. Where publishers will now say, right, go and get your first half funding from Kickstarter to prove there's a market, i.e., do the publishers work for them, and then they'll fund the rest. And then there's what about the failure to deliver in Kickstarter? All this kind of stuff has meant that generally people are a bit wary of Kickstarter. And I said, and what seems to be happening, what I'm kind of hearing is that there's a lot of smaller indie dev publishers who are now being far more approachable, because it used to be that getting in with a publisher was like a really big deal. Like you'd need to be a big company and dealing with Sony and that. But there's more and more kind of publisher stuff. And Kickstarter seemed to be an amazing thing to be in at the start, where you could just write a spec and it would get funded. There's your 200 grand or whatever. And nowadays we're talking about like you got demos, you've got to spend months on your campaign. And so I asked the question, like, if Anya was talking about the maturing of Kickstarter to the point where it's kind of leveled out in the effort you need to put in, but it's far, far more than it used to be. And I sort of made the point, like, okay, but what about in 6 months' time? Like, this maturing of the market is basically equating to lower chance of success on Kickstarter and more effort required to put into a Kickstarter campaign. And yet against that, so that's getting harder and less of a return. And on the other hand, now you've got smaller and more publishers who are coming from the other direction. They're getting easier to use and doing more work and having better knowledge of the markets. So in 6 months' time, how can you convince me that Kickstarter is not going to be a worse deal for me than just directly approaching a publisher? And I didn't get I got one of those responses of, thanks for asking that. Why did you set that up? In fact, she actually said, oh, you've just set me up, haven't you, for a fall? And no, that's not the case at all. But we talked afterwards as well verbally, and so all of this is the combination of those answers. But Kickstarter has a bit more going on behind the scenes than I realized. And in some cases it's that the Kickstarter, so it's her and one other guy work on the games aspect. So Kickstarter last year, I think they said, had about 4 billion worth of projects funded, right? So that's not their profit, but 4 billion worth of pledges, of which about 600 million, get those figures right, was games. So despite them being only kind of like, games, one out of all of these areas, it actually contributes, it punches above its weight. And there's a few reasons for that, but what it means is Kickstarter isn't just a naive thing. So you can always go and contact them on Kickstarter if there's something wrong, something you don't know, and they'll try and get back to you, which was really nice. I didn't know it. I thought Kickstarter was fire and forget, and then they weren't going to help you. But there is a support community there, and she likes to help. Although two people trying to help 566 games is going to be a tough call, and but there are publishers sniffing around these things as well, and it seems like, if a publisher sees your Kickstarter, then they may be able to, find out some details or or maybe even some are, I don't know, I can't remember exactly, and I don't want to say too much, but it sounds like basically Kickstarter is actually more attractive than just being this blind campaign thing without any support. Will Diorama Kickstarter ever happen? I still have my money. It depends if I need the money or not. So the net result is Anya is someone I'm going to keep in touch with because she's one of two people and she only wears black. So remember that. Bye-bye, Teasel. Thanks for your opinion. Thanks for weighing in. So I've come out of it feeling more positive about Kickstarter, but the need for it in Diorama has abated. That was a very loud yawn, little cat. Yes, you should look ashamed. Anyway, so the next deal was I was going to go to a talk called Self-Publishing Best Time Ever Does Not Equal Easy, and it was by Agostino Simonetta from Microsoft Xbox. So I went in there and yeah, I did say it was going to be first 3 or 4 months of 2017, and then I had my kind of a downer, and then some other things like Bart we cropped up, which were really cool. Very grateful for that. So things worked out differently, but that's, you know, flexibility is good, right? Anyway, Microsoft Xbox, and he immediately started off, and I didn't even really know this. So Microsoft ID program. How's it going to work? Xbox Windows 10. Let's see if that works out. Right, yeah, that looks like it. Idea Xbox, that's the one. The Idea Xbox program enables qualified game developers of all sizes to unleash their creativity by self-publishing digital games on Xbox One and Windows 10 with Xbox Live, giving studios the tools and support needed. So that was pretty much one of their opening slides. And is the investor okay with it though? Yeah, UWP, probably. I don't actually know the names. Anyway, as soon as this came up, I walked out of the meeting. I walked out of in front of about 200 people because I tend to sit at the front. I just left. Anyway, so I have no interest in Microsoft and its kind of push to try and get you onto the desktop in a way that I can already do, for crying out loud. I got 2 dev kits too, but no resources to use it. Okay. I mean, I'm a bit of a Sony fanboy, and that will crop up later on, right? Oh gosh, I forgot to tell you how I grilled the lead guy from Crow Team actually about VR. That was fun. Yeah, I just walked out. So I went to the next one, which was Al Malisto from Starbreeze Studios. Who knows Starbreeze Studios? There we go. They've done, oh crikey, games. So, yeah, they're doing publishing and stuff. And the guy was, and the talk was called The Art of the Video Game Publishing Deal, or How I Learned to Get My Independent Game Funded Without Getting Screwed by a Publisher. Okay, a guy called Al Malisto. Anyway, he was very, very slick, very interesting, and I still walked out of his after about 5 minutes. Because it was just doing the hard sell on their company. They were just talking about what they were doing, how it was good. And I heard nothing of like, basically, the answer of the question of how can I learn to get my independent game funded without getting screwed by a publisher? The only answer they were giving was go to them, basically. So I walked out of that one. I can't be bothered with that kind of hard sell where I don't think it's ever going to come useful. Crikey, that's going slowly here. That's only Thursday. Anyway, after that was Jonathan Blow's talk called Making Game Programming Less Terrible. Now, try not to laugh at me. Let's have a look. In my opinion, in a few years, nobody needs consoles anymore because you can put a really high-end system already in a case smaller than Xbox. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm not fully with you on that. You're talking about the economics of it, but I think, you know, not just brand loyalty, but convenience comes in bigger than that. So yeah, but I mean, that's another conversation. I mean, you know, the hardware market for consoles is changing from huge different releases. We've already got the incremental releases. They're talking about the Switch 2 and stuff. Yeah, anyway, Jonathan Blow, making game programming less terrible. Now, try not to laugh at me, but I missed the first 3/4 of it. So after saying that I really wanted to see that talk, that was the one I really wanted to see. And it was absolutely packed. It was probably the biggest one apart from one of the keynote speeches. And I saw some things, I basically missed his rationale, and I missed the early days, which probably talked about the problems. And then he showed some things that he was working on, which he thinks, some of the demos we saw, he was thinking is probably going to be his next game as well. But we didn't see enough of it to make any assumptions about the type of game. But some of the figures were like, the game's compilation takes half a second, and even that to him feels long. It's got huge runtime type information that is perfectly accurate, so everything can be reflective and debug easily and stuff. And it was kind of nice. Is there finally a compiler out for Joe? I have no idea. I need to go and watch the Twitch talk. Watch the talk on Twitch. So yeah, it looked like Soccerban. Yeah, it did. And it's just yeah, I saw the notation and stuff, and he's not that fussed about the syntax. That's not the biggest deal. But the bit I heard, I thought, right, well, there's nothing, like, he spent years developing this, and there's a whole heap of other people, and some of the problems he wanted to solve sounded very good, right? But there was a bit like all of the features he was actually displaying. I was like, well, you could spend a couple of days and probably do that in Lua. And I was sort of like, But then a kind of brief thing broke out about just-in-time compiling, and he's very much anti that. He's kind of, I understand where he's coming from, and I mostly agree with him, which is that he likes predictability in systems, and I can't be a hypocrite and say I don't, because I remember some big arguments I used to have with some previous devs. I remember one instance where I was arguing about memory usage and needing to be predictable, and he was going, because we were on a very limited handheld. This is probably the Game Boy we were on, which has a very limited memory, and someone was talking about using just a regular heap allocation system, and I'm like, no, and he had some very good points as to why it was probably safe, and I was like running away. So I've had big discussions in the past about predictability of systems, but I guess with something like Lua and jitting and most powerful computers, you can kind of force it to be faster. I guess I've just never used it in the way that he would, for example, in a performance critical area enough to worry me. So yeah, I haven't been that worried. I just realised I'm being a prat, because I was doing all this stuff and saying, look, here's Starbreeze and the games, but you couldn't see it. So I'll keep my window up. That was ID at Xbox, and that was me searching other stuff. And anyway, so I think it was Thursday. It might have been Thursday. So Thursday was the time when I managed to catch hold of Jonathan Blow at the end of the evening. He was in the bar along with a load of other people. There's a lot of people around, is what I mean, but he was kind of on his own, and I went over and I said, look, you may be busy, but do you mind if I have a chat? And I ended up probably talking to him one-on-one for about 3/4 of an hour, and then one other guy joined for a half an hour or so, and then we got invited to a party on a boat. Clearly that's how the other half live. And the trouble was I hadn't seen his presentation, right? So the thing that I've been interested in is the why and the value and the return on investment on these things. And I couldn't, because I wasn't fully armed on it. So we talked about quite a few things. And funnily enough, for those of you who watched me stream The Witness, and I told him I only felt that one particular puzzle was unfair, he then he remembered the puzzle that I was talking about, and he tried to explain why it wasn't unfair, or not that so much, but he said he didn't like surprises and stuff, but he liked, he tried to give clues. And so, shall I do this? So the problem was, it was the last of the shadow problems in the woods, right? So anybody who knows Witness, so it's based, in fact, let me just go and find pictures. The Witness puzzles. I'm sure you do know these. Yeah, so they look like this, right? And then they get more and more complicated. And you can kind of just see there, one of them's got shadows on and stuff like that. Anyway, these puzzles, the ones that I'm talking about, were all about shadow. Oh, there it is. There we are. It's all about shadows, right? So in this puzzle, you have to work out, view image. Oh no, it is that small. You have to work out to get from the circle to the exit, all right? Yeah, so here, these are metal, so you can ignore these vertical stripes. Hello, Jodie. What are you up to, apart from brushing your teeth? Don't answer in case you spit everywhere. But these are branches. So what you do is you have to trace a path around here. Okay. And some of the puzzles you have to dodge the branches, and on others you have to follow the branches. And the final puzzle is split down the middle in a very unobvious way. I totally missed that it was a two-parter for like 50 minutes. Well, I was stuck on it for about 40 on the stream. Can you shut the door, Jodie? Thanks. And in fact, let's go and have a look at it. The Witness. Final shadow puzzle. That's the one. That's the one. All right. Okay. So I knew that it was start, and this is clearly obviously a whatever, but it's split down the middle, right? So you can see this transitioning from avoid the shadows to be on the shadows. And it took me a long time. And I said this was the only time I felt cheated. And what was brilliant was that he gave a reason. He said it was foreshadowed. He didn't use that word. Oh, cheers. Teasel's sitting on my notes. And he said it was foreshadowed because most of the time you would encounter a set of trainer puzzles and they'd all be in a row, right? That's what we used to. But I missed this, and I'm actually going to go back and play it to find out because I'm like that. And he was saying that actually in this case, instead of going along like a row of puzzles in a sequence, it actually apparently did fork, and one half of the puzzles was about avoiding the shadows and the other half of the puzzles was about going over it. Now, I don't think that was enough of a hint, but whatever. I mean, there was he did try that there. There was a try there. So that was kind of quite interesting, actually, I thought. And what I didn't realise was that when you solved one half of these puzzles, these trainer puzzles, one of the doors, one of the two gates would open to signify which half was done. But I seem to have found them all in a row. So I came to this room last and I'd never seen the two doors, two gates opening separately. So that was, you know, it was lost on me. There are probably other ways that could have been done. But, I mean, it wasn't too terrible. It just made me really angry. But I did tell him that I thought the game was like the game of the year for me. And it was really interesting because he said, oh, you know, I don't really live for the praise and stuff. And he sort of backtracked a bit going, no, don't get me wrong. Hearing about these things is really good and helps, you know, keep you going through the difficult times. But he goes like, you know, along with the praise, if you take the praise on board, you know, you'll generally take on the criticism. And he says a lot of it is really, really rubbish and really annoying. Let's have a look at some of these other ones while we're looking at it. Yeah, look, dodge them there. I'm getting really excited thinking again about The Witness. I'm a saddo, aren't I? Oh yeah, and the shadows are sometimes offset incorrectly, so you have to work out. Oh, very, very clever. And excuse me, cat. I was trying to solve it for ages with one door closed. Oh, okay. Well, I didn't even get that, Bartwee. So you had the opportunity to pick up on the two strands of puzzles, but I didn't. I solved all of them first and then went to the end for the first time and saw, well, both gates are open. I didn't actually know anything. I love the environmental puzzles. Yeah, and I told him about that, which is like one of the things I like doing with somebody who's played The Witness. Is like, what was their first environmental puzzle? You know, it's such, for me, it's such a big part of the games and my gaming history that I can remember, and I will probably remember in 30 years' time when Teasel's just constantly in my face. She'll still be around in 30 years' time. That I know exactly what the first environmental puzzle I saw was. And the other thing as well is every time I got stuck on a puzzle or I was curious about finding the solution to one after I finished the game, I didn't do spoilers beforehand. Every time they would accidentally spoil something else and I was kicking myself. So I just don't even though I may never play The Witness again, I simply can't bear the agony of looking up a spoiler and then accidentally finding out something else as well. But he said he was a fan of the Metroid games. Yes. But loved the marsh the best. I can't fully remember the marsh other than knowing that I got stuck there and kept feeling I'd forgotten the rules for it. It felt like it was quite hard to progress. It felt slow progression with all the moving bits as well, which meant experimentation was slow. But it wasn't a bad thing. Especially the dual line ones where one line is invisible. Oh, yes. Yes. I never played it. I saw you playing it for like that one stream, so I never figured out what the whole point of it all was. Me neither. And so he's a fan of Metroid. And so I got to tell him my anecdote that I think I may have held the world record for Super Metroid completion. Jodie's rolling her eyes at me. She does that anyway, to be honest. But yeah, it was a tiny bit tragic, but I was getting very enthusiastic. And the net result is he's definitely got the nerdy programmer blunt streak through him, but he was a very nice guy. And it was good. And I challenged him, because I always talk about how much games cost. I challenged him and said, look, how long did The Witness take? Wasn't it like 5 years? And he goes, well, actually, it's about 6, maybe longer. We're still working on it now. Hello, Radlab Gaming. And I said, do you not basically think that like 6 years is too long to spend on a game? Like, could you have cut it in half? Or were there some elements of the game that needed 6 years to gestate? And he immediately said, yeah, we could have lost a year easily if we'd been a bit smarter about something or other. And he goes, but the rest is a bit harder. And he goes, yeah, we probably could have shaved off another year as well. So we probably could have taken 2 years out of 6. But getting it down to 3 would have been pushing it. But it's interesting, you know, like this is where some of the other threads have come in, which is like Jonathan Blow takes his time to make games. He's making another language. The guys from Crow Team, when I talked to them about VR, they gave the answer, because I said, look, I don't think there's a lot of money to be made in VR, and I think its time isn't there. I said, I'm not anti it, but I'm anti where it's at now. And he was saying, he goes, there is money to be made in it because we are making money. And he said there, before Talos Principle 2 comes out, they're looking at adding VR support to the Talos Principle 1. He gets so much flack for the high price. Yeah, I think The Witness is well worth it though. But the point is that he then said, he goes, look, you know, VR may be dead. VR, even if it was a disaster, which he doesn't think it is anyway, he goes, we're game developers, we love it, we can afford to spend this money on it. It's what we want to do. And this gets interesting, because obviously enthusiasm and love for the subject matter or for technology is really important, right? And I actually don't have a problem with that. And so, like, at best with Crow Team talking about VR, it's a case of, oh, are there more profitable ways? Well, actually, them working on VR support for a game or on a VR game isn't going to bring the company down, right? It's a low risk, it's high risk in that it might not be very profitable, but it's low risk in that it's not going to bring them to their knees, right? So these, and the same with Jonathan Blow and what he's doing. He's created an environment and he's worked and he's got backing and money to the point where even if these experimental but highly interesting things don't work out, it's not a big deal, right? And I think that has informed my opinion of these situations a bit better, because that's the difference, right? If you want to do something experimental and crazy, actually, I'm not against that. I'm against it where it could be the end of you, right? Pardon me. And, you know, like if somebody was trying to do what Jonathan Blow was doing with Jay, I don't actually know how to pronounce it, Jai, as their first project with no history, and it was going to take them 5 years, then they probably shouldn't do it. And the same I'd say with people doing VR games. I think there's enough. He has FU money. What does that mean? Is that good or bad? Yeah, he can do the thing that interests him. Exactly. Yeah. And so, you know, I think the fear of it made me think that I probably come across as negative. And it's like I talk about risk all the time, but I think it kind of manifests itself in a way of saying, don't do VR at all, right? And don't do that, and don't do this, and deal with your market. And actually, it's a bit more nuanced than that, because I don't want to be ever stifling creativity and stifling enthusiasm. It's just that there's also there is always a reality of, is this going to kill you or not? Should it fail? And people can do what they like ultimately, but yeah, I find it. I have no argument against these people with money that can afford to lose it. But for the people that can't afford to lose it, I strongly think they should be doing something different. Very strongly. Speaking of people with damn near infinite money, what's Notch up to lately? No idea. Enthusiasm Rob confirmed. Yeah. He has a bit of Elon Musk, I guess, in that regard. Yeah, what would have been interesting is if I'd seen the start of his talk to find out exactly what problems he was trying to solve. Because compile time isn't the biggest issue for me, especially, as I say, like if you've got something with interpreter, runtime interpreter, such as Lua, you can hot load that all you want for free, right? FU money in startups investing is considered bad because they can't influence, motivate with money. What does FU stand for? Am I? Is this going to be a swear word or something? Oh. All right, it is. All right. Well, C++ sucks. Compile times are a big part why I don't use it. But, yeah, I agree that. Lua is a shitty language, though. Well, I strongly disagree with that one. But let's not get too sidetracked about that. Let's just do... I'd argue C++ is a bit rubbish, yes, but it's pretty good. Oh, everyone's piling in now. Anyway, so the net result of that is that I still need to watch Jonathan Blow's talk. I didn't get the chance to say I thought Braid was a bit poncy and a bit hypocritical, but it didn't matter because that would have been counterproductive. And I don't need to say that because I think the witness is so good. So I come out of it and he's a cool guy. Right. Gosh, that was just talking about the first day. Okay, let's go fast on that. So Friday's talk was with Goichi Suda from Grasshopper Manufacturer, and he's known as Suda51. And he was talking about, he's quite a well-known Japanese dev, and he's worked on things like Lollipop Chainsaw, Killer 7, was it that one? I can't remember, but ultimately he was talking about games he's failed, that he's worked on that were canned, and he couldn't actually talk too much about them, so there wasn't much. I didn't find it that interesting, to be honest. Anyway, next one, Pavel Michalski from 11-Bit Studios. This War of Mine. So, This War of Mine. 11-Bit Studios. And the talk was entitled Why Marketing is a Part of the Meaningful From This War of Mine to Frostpunk, Why Marketing is a Part of the Meaningful Entertainment. And I watched all of it. It was interesting, but it turned into another studio advertisement generally. So where's This War of Mine? Hang on a sec. Oh, there we go. No, that wasn't it. There should have been one. I didn't think it was called The Little Ones. Maybe that's whatever. But this is a sort of serious game. How's your cat doing? She's all right. She's left the room. She was here earlier. I promise she was doing well. No, it's all right, Flint, still. It's not going to be a hugely long stream. It's probably got only about another 7 hours. Grin. Yeah, so this is a survival, pretty bleak game, but apparently very good. I actually don't know much about it, but what they were saying was that this was a very personal game to the player as well as to the devs, and they 11-Bit Studios, they're a studio that's trying to promote depth and emotion and connectivity to the player with the scenario and all those sorts of things, which is a very noble goal. And so they sort of showed what they're working on now, which is Frostpunk. Let's go and see if that's got anything. They showed a trailer of it, which was pretty good. I'll have that running in the background. So I don't know if any of you have played this War of Mine or anything. The Little Ones is a DLC for a thing. Oh, okay. And it was quite interesting because they said like how a lot of their decisions, a lot of their early gameplay, creative, thematic things relates to marketing. So it's not like marketing is an afterthought, but it can influence and be influenced by the game development. So it's a far more symbiotic relationship between marketing and game development than perhaps other studios went. But apart from that, it wasn't that strong a talk on this. But they did talk interestingly about, you know, their design philosophy behind Frostpunk and how it related to this War of Mine. So this War of Mine was very much about individuals. You played as individuals, you cared about individuals. Life and death was really important. And there you go. And I'll just wait for the next bit to kind of finish. So the city must survive. So what we've got here at the start of this is a very personal trailer, right? So this is harking back to the themes in this War of Mine, right? It's individuals, right? So we've got all of this, individuals, and then you've got the drama moment, but it's still individuals. We can see the guy up close, and let's keep going. All right, so no spoilers. He falls, but it's okay because he's saved. We've got individuals. Everything's going fine. It's going to be dramatic. So this harks back to this War of Mine. And then the unthinkable happens, right? Actually, they're both dead. Splat. Well, that was unexpected, wasn't it? And now, as we pull back, this is their way of leading into their next theme. Look, there's a light. There's another light. There's lights all over the place, right? So now, that was an individual struggle to go here to this town. But there's hundreds of people in exactly the same struggle to get to the town. So they were highlighting their history, and also this tagline of "the city must survive" is taking the how much you care for an individual thing on a higher scale, on a macro scale. It's not just the individuals now, but the city must survive. And the story is that it's like it's kind of an alternate reality timeline thing, kind of steampunky, and there's been an apocalypse of some sort. And this looks like it's the only single human refuge left in the world, and that's why everybody goes there, and that's why it's so important that the city must survive, because it represents humanity. And pretty good, right? So it was nice to see, but I didn't learn much about how to market my game. I genuinely didn't. So, okay, moving on. What have we got? So there was a talk, a panel called Building Game Worlds, A Geographer's Perspective. And I think that was a mistake. I don't think it was Building Game Worlds, A Geographer's Perspective, because that was the name of another talk that I went to the next day. But this one was, it had Tim Kaine. Who knows Tim Kaine? Tim Kaine, Obsidian. So I'm gonna speed up a bit here. Right. So that's the guy, and producer, lead programmer, one of the main designers of the game Fallout. And he is an unbelievably affecting presenter. He's a nice guy. He's got good anecdotes. He's been around like 15 years more than me or something. He is jolly good. The game is not supposed to look like this, is it? It's just to make you feel something about that atmosphere and story. Well, I don't know, but I think I got the impression in the talk that Frostpunk might, you know, you're probably dealing with things at a city level, but you'll still have a personal attachment to people, maybe. Look good. Right. So he is, and he's worked on Fallout 2, 3 or whatever. Let's have a look. And he was talking some about his history. But they were talking about things to do with Fallout. Yep, there is more. Yep. And he was very interesting to listen to, and there are lots of interesting anecdotes. But it wasn't about building game worlds, I think, so much as talking about RPG design. So I won't really talk about that much because it overlaps a lot with his talk on the final day. Anyway, what else have we got? So then we had Ivan Tranchik, which was from Celence, which was the one that... Yeah, I watched it, but I think I walked out of it, actually. Can't remember. Oh, no, I did see it towards the end. I just didn't hang around. So this was more influencer dealings, and they were the ones with the incredibly unrealistic figures that just made me, like, too good to be true. Anyway, next one was a guy called Nick Rook, who's for Sony Interactive Entertainment Europe. And in fact, he's really high up, actually. He's like, let's go and have a look. Thanks, LinkedIn. Okay, I won't look at that then. He's like the development director, I think. Does this not do cached? No, it doesn't. Anyway, and his talk was about developing with PlayStation. He was really high. Maybe Frostpunk is 2D like the game they did before and the trailer's totally fake would not be the first time. Well, I mean, what I got the impression that in this War of Mine, like a game based around emotions and engagement in a, it's not an FPS shooter, right? Actually getting across in a trailer the emotions is probably far more valid than it is for any other type of game, because that's the hook in the game, right? The mechanics may be fun, and the style may be fun, but that's how they stand out from the crowd. So having a trailer that represents it in a way that it wouldn't if it just showed gameplay actually is valid. Anyway, so Nick Rook, and I worked for Sony years ago, and I actually checked out Nick Rook once I saw he was presenting to see if I ever overlapped with him. But actually, it looks like I was at Sony before him, and then he left and came back. But ultimately, we haven't overlapped. But we do know some of the same people. You could do a trailer like that for Factorio too. Yeah, maybe. Bartwee, by the way, has been tweeting that he's kind of addicted to Factorio. Isn't that right? Yeah, the trailer was not a gameplay trailer for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And it started off rather depressingly with talking about Sony VR stuff. So the figure was that they've sold over 1 million VR headsets for the PlayStation 4, which is a pretty good number. Okay, but the other thing to remember is, let's do some figures. So there's like about 56 million PS4s in that, and so 1 million has come out. Take the reciprocal of that, and we all know, where's the reciprocal on this? 1 over X, there we go. And times it by 100. So that's a penetration of VR headsets of 1.78% into the market of the PlayStation 4. Now, I remember ages ago, there was we're talking like 2 decades ago, the statistic for the penetration of additional hardware had never gone above 10% on any console with any particular piece of hardware. I guess this goes back to, even like Nintendo with the NES and the Rob Machine and the Power Glove and the gun and all those sorts of things and everything, and the Mega Drive and the Mega CD. All of these have never hit 10%. So 10% clearly must be seen as good. And despite the big overall figure of 1 million sales for VR headset, which is excellent, but it's still highlighting that N64DD, yes. Black Ops 3 didn't show anything of the game. Oh, okay, I don't know that one. What was I saying? Yeah, so 2% penetration, is that a success? Well, it is in one respect and it's not in another, but it highlights that the leading contender for VR products at the moment, which is Sony, still hasn't hit its stride at all. And what was interesting was he was talking about the different ways of getting indie games onto Sony hardware. And there are, there's things like having a good game, unsurprisingly, but they were looking at unique content and not just unique games, but unique genres and stuff like that. And they have a budget for this to look for standout, unique titles. But it seemed like they were heavily funding VR titles. It was that straightforward. They were looking for more and more platform specific VR titles, and so if a large part of their funding pie is for VR titles, I will never have access to that. But he did what I guess Sony have been doing for a while, which is ever since like the Xbox One came out, and actually this started at Microsoft at the end of the 360 when they started switching off from indies anyway. But Microsoft have always been playing catch up now for sort of a generation and a half, and Sony have always been. Have not always is the wrong word, but have recently in the last, say, 4 or 5 years, have been doing a very good job of courting indie devs, and that enthusiasm carried on with this guy. He's clearly very high up in the company. He's probably in the top row of the hierarchy, but he was very enthusiastic, and he was gonna. And I spoke to him before the talk briefly to say, I was at so. And I tried to grab him at the end, but there was a long list of people trying to speak to him. So I just said, look, mate, I'd love to catch up and talk, but you're clearly busy and this is business and stuff. So so we matched up on LinkedIn, and then we were going to have a conversation. We pinged each other, but it turns out that he left the conference a day earlier than I realised, and when he was free, I wasn't. So I mucked that one up. But I'm going to try and catch up with him again anyway. But he was quite open as well about talking all the different paths to get onto publishing on the PlayStation stuff. So PlayStation 4 indie publishing or something, I don't know. Let's see if anything crops up on here. So this is probably the main website. But I'm probably going to go and try and catch him in London. Go and have lunch or something with him, because I might go and see if they do have any funding money. So that's why stuff like Kickstarter wouldn't happen. Sega 32X, yes, well done. And or even the Sega Master System 3D glasses, right? But it's interesting to see, like, the Microsoft talk. Not only did it start off with like ID at Xbox, which doesn't interest me, but it seemed quite a dry presentation. Whereas Nick was very good. Like you can spot the really good presenters from the mediocre and the terrible or the nervous, and there are a couple that are really good, and he was one of them. So it made it easier to sit through the PlayStation VR stuff because there were some interesting facts in it, but ultimately it's a topic that doesn't really interest me. Right, what have we got after that? Tim Kaine, Obsidian Entertainment. So he's an interesting guy, right? So for years now, he keeps an ideas diary, and he just writes down little things. And so, you're right there, Kat. Yeah. Here's the teasel. Get money so you can hire Jodie as an artist. No, I think if anything happens, Jodie will get money to hire me as a programmer, but she'd probably hire someone else anyway. Teasel, maybe. Microsoft is getting killed from the inside out by politics. Yeah, Microsoft feels like a company that... It's been dominant. It's got a business model that still kind of works with like Office and that sort of thing, but it's kind of not quite working. Yeah, it feels like, where do they go next? I mean, I couldn't predict where Microsoft are going to go next or what they care about. And they've kind of gone ups and downs, and especially with the Xbox One, which was an amazing set of U-turns, which makes you think like, do you know what? I can't rely on them for anything long term, right? Stuff like that. So, yeah, whereas Sony's PlayStation wing is going to keep on running. Let's just get Teasel. Let's get you full screen because you're cute and I'm not. There we go. Here's the Mog. Right. Like they'll kill it if they'd think it would increase Win 10 market share. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Right, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, so let's see if we can find online Tim Kane's 7 mistakes to avoid. Someone's probably got a picture at this. No, it's not gone up quick enough. Tim Kane at building an RPG. Yeah, so this is probably great. I'm on Twitch streaming while running a Twitch stream. Doesn't seem to be working anyway. Codex summary here, excellent. Oh, okay. So if I send you the guys the link. So he keeps these diaries in effect. Of just development ideas and goods. And what he said for this talk was he went through them to see if there were common mistakes that he was making. And yeah, let's read this. So mistake number 1, steep learning curves. Tim thinks character creation in Fallout Arcanum and other RPGs was too complex. He's experimented with creating a completely numberless character system that uses geometric shapes to visualize attributes. So the deal here is like, how many attributes does somebody have? Right, you know, in an RPG, like he was making the point that like complexity doesn't always help, and certainly in terms of design it's bad. Like if you've got 20 attributes, luck, strength, skill, dexterity, magic defense, magic offense, how do you balance them so that each of them is equally valid in a playthrough, or each combination of them is equally valid? And actually the more of these different types you have, the harder it gets to balance them. I mean, how can you play through a game of something like Fallout's complexity and say that, yeah, luck has as much of an impact as anything else and it's a valid build? So he's sort of looked back at his old stuff and he's looked like there's too much of it. There was too much of this. So he's tried to reduce the number in each subsequent game. And it's like, well, I mean, like, you know, dexterity versus stamina. Are these things absolutely necessary? And also, you know, so reducing the number of stats. But then what does a 6 out of dexterity mean? You know, how is 6 in dexterity relating to 8 in dexterity? Like what does that actually mean? It's kind of an abstract scale anyway. I'm better or worse at. So numbers themselves are kind of not necessarily that helpful because they imply a quantitative value that it's hard to equate to anything. So he was coming up with some kind of ideas, but you should watch this this stream because I won't try and describe his alternative because it's getting into the far more subjective solutions now. Oh, that was good. But there were some interesting things he was trying to do to help visualize the connection between different stats and how if you gained in one, it might be negative in another. And it was quite good. Right, let's have a look at the chats. Microsoft never should have been in the console business. They would have been way more successful if they had made a Steam competitor way back then. They tried with games for Windows Live. It failed miserably. It sure did. It's like with Uplay and Origin. But Uplay and Origin kind of, don't they justify their cost or whatever? Good Old Games is doing all right. PS4 Scorpio will win anyway against Xbox. I mean, to be honest, if we do a quick look, so PS4 sales versus Xbox One. Sony destroys. Okay, it's the Express. Let's be very careful. So this was January the 20th. So start of this year. The Xbox One has reportedly sold 26 million units. Yeah, and it's sold more than double. Yes, it has. Microsoft is putting on a brave face, telling GameSpot that the Xbox One was the top-selling console in the second half of 2016. That's an interesting one. I could imagine that they've had to massage figures to get to that. Scorpio is a hack to make the Xbox 4K capable. Yeah. The new PS4 you can get for €99 is the PS4 Pro. For €99? I don't think so. That doesn't sound right. Anyway, mistake number 2. Let math trump psychology. Revealing the influence the years he spent developing WildStar. 10 months to of math. Uh, yeah, so let me just check. Yeah, so that was an interesting one in that, like, um, if you're in a fight with someone and you've got a 25% chance to hit, right? People felt unsatisfied if actually the chances of their first hit connecting was 25%. Why is that? Well, mathematically it's correct, but um, the player might think it misses, right? Or sorry, it misses and it feels bad. Why is my first one miss? And then your second one could miss, and then your third one could miss. And even though statistically that's okay, it was saying like the lessons it was giving to players were awkward. So you would stagger it so that your first one would always hit, but then after that, it would the percentage would be correct for over. It would be modified your subsequent chances to sort of regulate that 25% chance and keep it feeling correct. I don't fully remember too much about that, but the idea is don't let maths trump psychology. Just because it's accurate doesn't mean to say it's rewarding or as expected for the player, which crops up with this misunderstanding randomness. Conflating player skill with character skill. This one will be familiar if you've watched some of Josh Tyler's. Aiming and hitting in an action RPG should not be determined by character stats. Yeah, so he gave a really good example here, right? So he was saying some games have, like, let's say you're in an FPS, right, and you're shooting down the telescopic scope of a gun, and I'm just checking. Oh, €99 for the PS4 Pro if you give your old PS4 two controllers and two games to GameStop. Right. Okay. Fair enough. Accurate does not equal fun. Yeah. So, for example, let's say you're shooting down the barrel of a gun, and normally in games there's spread, right? So you could change spread according to a stat of the player. And actually that sounds like, yeah, probably happens in Borderlands, probably happens in a load of games, right? The gun's spread is affected by stats. Right, the trouble is, though, is that aiming itself is a player skill, not a character skill, right? So if I'm rubbish at aiming, I'm rubbish at aiming, right? But if I'm good at aiming, I shouldn't become rubbish at aiming because of a character skill. So what he was making the distinction was that all of your stats should influence the outcome of shooting, but don't let it impact something that directly is about player skill. So the example might be that he would remove all spread from a gun that is based on character skill. Let the player shoot accurately or inaccurately, depending on their skill. But then things like the recoil time and the recoil distance are absolutely character skill, right? So in the former scenario, getting better at getting a higher shooting skill would lead to, oh, well, the spread is lower, I've got more chance of hitting them. But that takes away from the player's skill input and feedback. Versus the player can always shoot accurately, but he simply can't reorient himself if his character skill is low. And that was a really nice thing. Misunderstanding randomness. Yeah, as smart people, we can all understand about the multiple ways that randomness just winds people up because they don't understand. Pardon me, they don't understand that random is random. Yeah, here Tim lays out his frustration with the sorts of people who can't believe they could miss a 95% chance to hit attack 3 times in a row. His conclusion is that when people talk about randomness, they often mean selecting a token rather than rolling a dice. Yeah, and it was interesting because when he says, here's a scenario where someone came to him, and every time he offered a solution and he changed something. So that the other example was the audio guy said, here's 5 tracks, play them randomly in the game, right? You can already spot the problem, right? As if each time a track ends, it picks one of the other 5, or it picks one of the 5 at random. You get repeats. So the audio guy comes back and says, oh man, I don't want them playing 2 or 3 times in a row. So he then wrote something that made sure that whatever was picked next couldn't be the same song that was just played. And the audio guy goes, oh yeah, well that's not random either, is it? Because you're now playing track 1, then track 2, and then I got track 1 again, and then track 2, and it's not random. And he's going, okay. So then he would randomize the order of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and sent it back. So all 5 songs would play in a random order, and then all 5 songs would play in another one. And of course you still got an overlap at the ends where their patterns are forming. And anyway, the whole point is that randomness is a touchy subject, and I've already kind of believed this anyway from other various design talks I've read, which is randomness is not nearly as satisfying as people want to believe it's true. To do with loot drops and things like that. If you, I mean, this is the big part of gambling, right? It's a whole thing to do with variance and volatility in random patterns, and I wrote stuff like that too with the audio stuff, but not with songs, but round robin effects. Something, yeah, that would be exactly the same as well. Basically, what we think of as random that should be fair actually feels unfair. It's as simple as that. Randomness feels unfair, right? So try and avoid it. Forcing linearity. So this is one where I disagreed, but I mean, Tim, forcing linearity, this one is pretty self-explanatory. Tim says games are not movies. Using Fallout's Tandy rescue scenario with its multiple solutions is an example of the sort of non-linearity he prizes. So he was saying forcing linearity is bad both at a large and a small scale, and some of this came from his previous conversation on the panel that I saw, as well as this particular keynote talk in the morning. And hello, Harter. And yeah, so that doesn't surprise me, Bardwee, but someone will complain somewhere if the last song of the first pick is the same as the first song of the second set of picks. Yeah, exactly. Flipping a coin repeatedly. It doesn't seem fair. People don't understand the idea of cumulative randomness looking into the future versus coin tosses that have happened in the past, that they don't impact what's in the future. And things like the Monty Hall's puzzle really messes with people's mind. We don't understand distributions, randomness, that sort of thing. How was my adventure up that hill? I got a bit sunburnt. In fact, can you see like red neck and white shoulder? Don't know. Hopefully it compresses badly. So forcing linearity. So there was an interesting thing, at the big scale, Fallout, you can go and visit any of the key towns in any order, and they have to adapt to that. So he likes that. But also he gave an example of you need to rescue somebody that's been kidnapped and is in a bad guy's base. And it was interesting. He said, like, one of his designers came back and said, look, I've done this scenario where you have to rescue this person in the base. And he goes, there's 7 different ways of solving it. And I'll even have a go to see if I can remember what all 7 were. And he's going, and Tim was going, that's amazing. I love that. It allows different stats, different gameplay styles. And it sounds fantastic, right? And he said no one will ever find them all. But it's funny because someone on the internet somewhere listed all 7 ways to do it and how to do them. So, for example, to rescue this person, you could charge in and kill everyone. Or you could lockpick your way through by waiting for the guards to walk past. That's number 2. In fact, I'm going to write this down to see if I can do it. So, kill everyone. Lockpick. There was bribe your way in. There was wear a costume and go in. I'm going to struggle. And this is going to be really annoying. Challenge the leader of the gang. To one-on-one fight. Damn it. Yep, I have no idea. I can't remember what they are. And I'm listening to that, and it's exactly the sort of thing that sounds, yeah, great, fantastic. And then I realised, actually, this needs a bit more fine detail. So, for example, one of the things I was finding in games that I've played is that the thing is, wouldn't 100 heads result be more truly random than a 50-50 result? No, unless you were saying order was specific, because there's multiple paths that end up with a 50-50 result, so its chance is more likely than 100 heads. And this forcing linearity thing, I mean, apart from the massively increased complexity on a large scale where, quests can be done in a different order, that is really, really hard. But the thing about the small scale one is that someone's allowed 7 ways to complete the scenario. That's brilliant. But the trouble is that what as a games player, right? I don't think subtlety works very well on playing games, right? So, for example, you're faced with this rescue scenario, and you've got no clue on what to do. Now, we all know you can go and kill everyone. That's fine. But once it gets to this stuff, these ideas like bribing and the costume, and one of the things that needs to come into these things is that where there's multiple choices, in fact, this is probably true even when there's only one solution, right? Is that when somebody starts to do something that might work, it 100% should work, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, don't leave players ambiguously trying to understand the finer points of your gameplay rules. And things like Zelda Legend of Breath of the Wild is actually very good at this. So, for example, like if you throw an apple at a fire, well, it gets cooked, right? Well, that's not actually kind of correct. But what you're doing is if somebody has made a mental leap to try something else and they've been mentally creative, is reward it. Don't leave them hanging as to whether it's right or not. So, for example, I don't know this particular scenario in Fallout or Fallout 2 or whatever. If you're gonna wear a costume, right, you need to know immediately within a distance of whether it's going to succeed or fail, right? So, for example, you're wearing a costume and you're walking up to the base, right? The ambiguous thing is if nobody seems to change what they're doing, right? Because you don't know if you look okay or their AI just hasn't managed to catch you in their view cone and fight you. You still don't know that when you get to that door whether someone's going to suddenly go, hang on a minute, you look bad. So an example of rewarding the player for their creative thinking was if you get anywhere close to the base with somebody, in a costume, is one of the other guys says, hello there, haven't seen you for a long time, but you're welcome in here, come on in, right? That is immediately telling the player that this is all going to be okay. And the same with challenge the leader of the gang to a one-on-one fight. I don't even know how you'd go. I mean, I know it's possible, but how would you even do it? I think it was something along the lines of if you walk up to him and you're not carrying a weapon, and then because you're not carrying a weapon, nobody shoots you, although they'll gather around you, and then you can talk to the guy, and then you can say, oh, let's have a one-on-one fight, right? That to me sounds... not really sure. Like you'd be better off in the game of like teaching something about how people have Mexican standoffs or something in the game. Like maybe you need to learn to stand sort of 10 foot away and then slowly turn away, or something just to make it a bit more concrete. Anyway, right, being non-reactive. Tim seems particularly interested in the sort of reactivity where characters in the world have different dispositions based on your character's background, clothing, and attributes. He also loves having different end slides based on the player's choices in the game. Yeah, so I mean, the idea that in an RPG, and he said one of the things that people like doing in RPGs is to take all their clothes off, right? So, and I think even Jodie did this when she was playing Skyrim. Like, you go into a town and, out in the wild, you're in your biggest... bestest armor, and you go into towns and right, strip off. Why strip off? Well, because actually wearing less clothes might make you less conspicuous because you're less heavy and you don't stand out as much. And so people will be gaming to get like a 5% boost to their stealth or whatever it is. Yeah, and yet if you go into a shop and you're naked, surely I'm guilty playing Witcher 3 in a towel. Are we talking real life or in the game now? And Braymarch is saying, like, if all Breath of the Wild playthrough experiences were in a pot, I'd probably got one of the relatively worst ones. Well, that's the other thing. What was it I was saying? Like, we'll come back to this being non-reactive thing in a minute. Okay, like, there's in Breath of the Wild, you come across really big creatures. Like really, really friggin' tough creatures. And there's a rock monster, and what you're actually supposed to do really is kind of take him on by smashing his weak point on the back. But I didn't know he had a weak point on the back. And so I basically ran to a high point where he couldn't hit me, and it broke the AI, right? Because he can't reach you, he can't throw anything high enough, but you're not, you're not so far away that he goes back into the ground. And sadly, the game doesn't acknowledge it. Yeah, well, Tim is saying that they should. That is weird, man. You are weird, and you should acknowledge that. Oh, I should actually show people what. That is weird. Yeah, you're weird. Bye-bye, Teasel. Teasel's just sodded off again. Yeah, sorry. So you've got these big creatures, and so I was just chucking a bomb, and a bomb was doing like 1% damage, so it's going to take 100 bombs. But it didn't encourage me to do anything else, because if I got close, he would quite rightly twat me. So I would do... You disagree, Cat? So you can get out the door. You don't need me. Meow. And but I got to say, the game got better at one point when I just decided to skip shrines when I didn't feel like it. I just activated them. Yeah. I did it for the health, right? And because some of them were interesting, but actually, overall, they were time fillers. They felt like time fillers. They didn't feel... So some of the reviews have said that the shrines are replacements for the bigger levels and the dungeons, and I didn't feel that. I felt they were clunky. Anyway, yeah, so... And what happened with these big monsters was I managed to defeat one, and yet it was incredibly unsatisfying. I wanted the goal of defeating this monster, and yet it was by far and away the safest thing to do, and yet it felt like, one, I was being a coward, and two, I was breaking the fact that it's obvious that the AI doesn't know how to attack you when you're high up. Now, interestingly, some of the other creatures, big creatures, the Linel, they just fire magic that strikes you wherever you are, right? It just comes down from the sky and hits you, so you can't hide. But that's not true of all of these creatures. But this was an unheroic, unsatisfying, long-winded way of fighting them. It took ages. And so I don't like this feeling of like, here's a way of solving a problem, and yet it's unsatisfying. What the hell? So if you're going to do, whether this isn't about linearity or otherwise, it's just about good feedback to the player. Right. So, what was his other point? And his final point was telling horrible stories. Tim uses this to emphasize again that games are not movies. Not every character in a game has to be important or advance the plot. Tropes like the chosen one protagonist and amnesiac protagonist are tiresome and should be discarded. Yeah, and he said it was interesting in Fallout, in the idea that it starts off with everybody in the nuclear shelter drawing lots to see who goes out, and you pick it. And you're saying, but the whole idea is you're not the chosen one because you're so brilliant, but you might actually be the thickest person in the entire group, and you've literally drawn the short straw. And all the people who are left behind are basically thinking, I can't believe the thickest person is going out to try and save us. And like, oh well, he's probably going to be dead within 2 weeks, so we're going to have to draw lots again. And I thought that was quite nice. I think he's right in talking about like not every character in a game has to be important. I guess I'm a bit touchy of when people say games are not movies. They're right, but that carries a lot of baggage. It's a very broad statement as to what that means. Right. What else have we got? Let's say it seems I figured out too quickly how to kill enemies and the challenge was completely lost. The same happened to climbing. There are all these neat tricks that make you super overpowered. Yeah, and I actually wasn't searching for a lot of them, so I was forced to do... Somewhere along the line, I seem to have missed being told about some amazing things in Breath of the Wild that would make my life a lot easier. So actually, I ended up struggling. Yeah. Right. Let's have a look. There was the Kate Edwards from Igna, Building Game Worlds, a Geographer's Perspective. I probably won't talk about that one, but except briefly. That was quite nice. And talking about when you're... It actually turned out to be more like... it was an education on society and cultures, and not just for your game, but in terms of marketing your game. So it's not just like, don't accidentally go and have chanting from the Quran in the background of your game, which we know happened to Little Big Planet and a couple of others, right? That's just kind of basic stupidity. But it was giving examples of where, like, you know, as Westerners, you really need to be very, very careful, right? Chants from the Quran, obviously stupid, don't put them in. But one of the fantastic examples was, there was a game, and I can't remember what it was. It was like a real-time strategy game, and it was based around the China Seas. And it had a map that showed Tibet as Tibet rather than as a part of China, right? Now in China, that's considered probably criminal, right? So the game was going to get banned in China unless they changed the map to show Tibet owned by China. The problem, or the extra stupidity or unfairness of it all, is that this game was set in a time before the modern China was formed, right? So the map was historically a revisionist history, like they were enforcing that on the developers, or the game couldn't come out. And in fact, I'm going to try this now, because she used an example from Google as well to show that these kind of geopolitical issues affect what we're doing. So if I go to Google Maps, right? Let's have a look. Let's have a look. The ambience I get when I watch Zelda Breath of the Wild stuff is just boring. No music, art style boring, crafting boring. I found the cooking boring. Really did. Right, so let's have a look at this. India, right? Right. Here we go. So what do we have here? Well, we have lots of dotted lines, right? Why is that? Well, that's because these are contested areas, right? So Kashmir has been disputed between Pakistan and India, and is the course of wars and all sorts of, you know, people die over this. And the generally reflected worldview is that this is a contested area, right? Let's see if I can do this. What I need to do is log into Google Maps in, I don't want to type India actually. What I really need to do, let's see if I can do this. What's the India, is it .in? India top level domain .in. So what I'm trying to do is get into Google through their Indian portal. Okay, map of India. I might be able to do this. Right, so if we go here, oh look, the map is different. And this is a really good kind of reminder. Let's get rid of that. So if I zoom out, this contested area in India is shown as all part of India. Notice the thick lines. Right. So, and this is because it's illegal in India to show these areas as contested, right? I think China kind of claims some of the land as well, and stuff like that. And I was like, my God, this is crazy. It doesn't mind Tajikistan having a disputed border with China. India doesn't care about that. But yeah, all of these areas. I'm curious now to actually see Google. What's China's top level domain? I want to see what our CN. All right, google.cn. Map of China. Okay, is it that one? Is it that one? Yes. Right, so let's go and have a look over here. Oh, well, that's interesting. So this is being marked as a separate region. Nepal is a separate region. I'm surprised by that. Notice it's still showing contested. Anyway, I thought that was very interesting. But those are the kind of things like where, so it's not even that culturally you can make sure to avoid tripping yourself up with games. Actually, this is a big deal. It's a very big deal. Right. importance of influencers, and the final two bits of the conference before I talk about the games. Crimea is another one if you view from Russia. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah. In fact, I ended up talking about Crimea to a couple of people that joined, that were at the conference, because I sat down to lunch and there was a couple in front of us and I started chatting to them, and they were from the Ukraine. Obviously, Crimea was annexed from Ukraine by Russia. And they didn't speak English very well. But it turns out, guys, I've got that YouTube playlist where occasionally I play music from the Ukraine. It does have some Russian artists in as well, so I didn't tell them that. But I ended up showing them that I have this Ukrainian playlist of music, and they were well chuffed, and they knew the artists and stuff. And yeah, anyway, well done me. Anyway, this Brandon Sheffield, Necrosoft Games. How many of you know Necrosoft Games? I don't know why I'm pausing. It's going to take like 20 seconds before it gets through to you. His talk was called How We Survived for 5 Years Without a Hit. So let's go and have a look at Necrosoft. And this was one of the more interesting ones. Because how many of you have heard of their games? Whoa, this has gone a bit crazy. This has changed since I was here like a few days ago. I don't get it. There used to be... You've heard the name, yeah. Well, basically, his talk, How We Survived for 5 Years Without a Hit, he has an incredibly different approach to financing the games he makes. What I really want to do is find out where... Yeah, I'm not going to be able to. Okay, so we'll go to YouTube and sort of look at the game there. Oh dear, Necrosoft. All right, so what do we notice first? Oh dear, Alpha PlayStation Mobile. PlayStation Mobile, guys? How many do that? Let's get rid of the music. Anyway. So it's kind of an outrun game, but what's interesting here is the game isn't what matters, right? Because this isn't anything to do, this wasn't about game design per se at all. The profitability or the sustainability of their development model came not from the game, but in ways of getting money for not releasing the game fully. Now, I've got to be careful with that because the games do get released, but they get released on a lot of platforms that you and I will never see. So the traditional model of games would be create a pitch or a demo, go to a publisher, get funding for the development, and then release the game and then profit, right? What they do is they do a pitch, get money for a small version of the pitch for a unique platform. So you'll keep hearing this unique platform thing crop up. And then they develop not version 1 of the game, but they develop version 0.25 of the game and then release it. And then they go and find another unique platform to fund them to release that game on that unique platform. And then they'll use that money to get to version 0.3 and then they'll release that game. And then they'll get another funder to put another load of money in, right, for a different platform. And I'm sitting there going, what the hell? Where do all these unique platforms come from? And they're saying mobile developers, they've got money off of this for PlayStation Mobile. What the hell? That was like 4 years ago. But they're saying what happens actually is that they get far more income and occasionally they hit it big with really easy games. Like there was one where they got $10,000 funding for a new platform and it took them 1 or 2 days to convert the game as it stood for that platform, right? Well, I wouldn't mind earning 10 grand over 2 days. But where does the game end up? Well, it might be on Vita. It might be... Basically, all of these platforms sounded like smaller ones you'd never really see, right? And especially when he started mentioning, the Chinese market has got like 100 different platforms or game services. And so his game is probably played across the largest part of China, of which he's been paid to develop the same game and do continual improvements, probably about 10, 15 times, whatever it is. And and I'm sitting there going, my God, that's pretty amazing and stuff. And he said, so again, this was one of the more interesting ones. So I piped up and asked some questions at the end, and I said, so it's interesting you're saying all of these things, because a lot of us make games because we want the game to be out there, right? But you've said you're only making like £5,000 on sales of your game. All right, which is a very low amount of money. So I was saying, like, the fact that you're making money and successfully developing the game, and yet, pardon me, it sounds like nobody's playing it. Whereas we're kind of, that's not, that's okay. But I'm just saying, most of us are kind of probably more motivated by creativity and financial success, right? And he was saying, well, I probably wasn't. Rob, probably wasn't listening, and. That just looks bad quality. There must be a better one than that. Humble original game, if you say so. And it doesn't look quite so nice now. It's in HD actually. And he was saying no. When these games come out on these markets, it's not that he's only selling £5,000 worth of the game. It's just that some of the deals he does releases the game for free. So like on these Chinese markets, someone's paid him 20 grand to, or whatever it is, to convert for their particular platform. But then the game is released for free because they're gagging for this kind of unique content or this free content for their subscribers or whatever the deal is. Or like, like you might be paid by a particular phone manufacturer, so it's bundled on the phone, right? So he's saying, like, actually, we've got hundreds of thousands of people playing the game. It's just that 99% of them or whatever are for free, and only a few times we've released the game on a pay for the game thing, right? You're like, okay, that's quite cool. So then I asked, so what kind of percentage is split between money for development versus money from people buying the game? And he said, well, like one of the examples was, I don't think it was this game. It was one of the others. But during development, they got paid about 200,000, and all he got in terms of sales was 5,000. So he's going, in that case, it's like over 95% of their income comes from the publishing deals and not from the actual income of selling the game. And so he talked about some of the pros and cons there of this particular business model. Now, I'm going to put my hand up and say, I could not do it, right? I couldn't deal with that stress. I couldn't dealing with business people and stuff like that constantly. And he says it's interesting in that you get more income or more points of getting income during the project's lifetime. But it can be just as more stressful. Like he was saying at the end of last year, he had 3 deals that were done deals, all handshake agreed, and then within the space of 2 months of the beginning of this year, all 3 fell through. So he went from a position of having 200 grand coming into their bank accounts to nothing. So he just had to quickly run around, and I kind of salute the creativity of this, and there clearly is, I'm impressed that these different models exist, but it's something that I would just have to say it's not for me. I don't know. I quite like looking at this game. I've got a soft spot for Outrun style graphics. This is kind of cute. But yeah, I thought it was very, very interesting. So this game, and he said one of the benefits of doing this kind of repeated release is that your company feels like it's punching above its weight because it's got a long list of releases, even though they're the same game, but they're for different platforms and tweaks and stuff like that. And he's saying, like, you get very good at marketing. He says this is the thing. It's like he's now hot at marketing because he's had to market his game 20, 30 times, or all of his games together 30 times, or whatever it is, as opposed to most of us will make one game and then we have to market it, and we're beginners at it, which is, that sounds pretty ridiculous. So I was very impressed with him and his ingenuity and their hard work, but I also thought there's stuff to learn from it, but it's a case of that's very much not for me. Are you all right there, Cat? Oh, hang on, Teasel. Come on, Cat. Right. It's okay, everyone. We're getting to the end of my chat, so that's good. Oh, meow. So we got to an interesting point that what was happening was the... What was that, cat? Meow. What's that, Teasel? Meow. So I got to go soon. What were the indies on the thing? So, well, let me just say, so at the end of the whole conference, they had a wrap up and they gave some awards for like best game, most creative game, whatever. And I don't really want to name names about games, right? Because I want to be positive, right? So it's okay for criticism and stuff. However, it's kind of hard to avoid in this area because I thought their judging was pretty bad, right? So a good example. Let me go and find the game. And the reason I'm going to pick on this one is not because it's a bad game, but it's because it's a game that I think is not a game that should be held up for others to aspire to. And the reason for that is because the old business sense comes in, right? I think this game is a disaster, right? And yet I also can understand why it's done very well. Excuse me, cat. So let's go and have a look at this game. Let's put the video on. So Block Ships won 2 awards. In fact, just before I do that, let's go and find out which ones they were. Visit the website because I'm sure that will list what awards it just got. No, it won't. Oh yeah, they haven't updated it yet. Anyway, so it's in fact it's got other accolades. Oh, twat. All right, here we are. So it's called Block Ships, and PAX 10 2016 runner-up best game in show, selected for Indie Zone. Yeah, and it won a couple of awards here, including like best game, right? But let's watch the video and see if you can guess what my harsh criticism is going to be. Anybody, feel free to have a comment before I do, because I'm going to be quite strong about this. I wonder if this has got a different video. To be honest, you can't really tell. No, it looks like the same. So, all right, so here's why it won the awards, right? Is that it's a very immediate game, it's very in-your-face game, and it's great fun, right? That sounds fantastic, right? Well, let's sort of analyze some of this, and this boils into what I'm probably going to talk with about the indie games as a altogether, right? So, is that this is great fun in local multiplayer, right? A game about building a bigger, better ship while blasting your buddies to bits and chatting about it. It's a local multiplayer party arena game and challenges you to strike the right balance. Anybody who knows me will immediately see that local multiplayer party game, right? Local multiplayer. Local multiplayer, as far as I'm concerned, is a total waste of time. Even though Overcooked has actually sold quite well, I think it's about 300,000 copies. Yeah, but local multiplayer is not a genre that does very well. So let's go. So I sort of went and had a look. So here's a question, right? I'm going to go on to Steam Spy. The game's been out for early access on Steam for the past 7 or 8 months. How many copies do you think it's sold? Local multiplayer. Here we go. Look at this. It's sold 646 copies in 7 months, despite awards, despite a thing. Local multiplayer is exactly the sort of poor decision making that I don't like in it, right? Again, going back to my earlier thing, if these guys want to make these games, that's fine, right? The issue is can you afford to make that game if it fails, right? Now, I don't know, right? But anything that holds up like the wrong type of lesson to indies, I don't think should be winning awards, right? Winning awards are for things that push the boundaries creatively or aesthetically or with gameplay, or are just damn good games that are going to sell. But amongst this needs to be a realistic aspect. Otherwise, rewarding indies for this, it's just kind of pretentious knobbery. I cannot see a future in which this game does even mediocrely well, right? Well, this game at the moment is only local multiplayer, right? Now, and when you look at, if we go to the website, it talks about in the future it's going to be, I can't actually see it, where, in the future, network multiplayer. Good luck with that. Single player skirmish mode in progress. Good luck with that. Neither of these are going to work out very well. I am pretty sure of that. I can see like with the slow moving and stuff, but this is not a game that if they're taking this long to make the base game, I would argue they're not hugely competent at doing the even harder stuff. There is no single player, not even bots. No, exactly. Well, it's in early access, right? These things are all coming. And like multiple new block types on the way, 3 more at launch. Do you know what? Adding a new block type should be a day's work. You know, this should be saying 4,000 new block types. I don't get it. Right. So, and this won the 2 kind of biggest awards. And again, it's because so many of the games demoed badly, which is a big topic I'd like to go back onto. But some of them obviously are never going to be immediate grabbers, right? Whereas if you're not, and I'm going to be harsh here, if you're not a critical judge, you're not going to correctly weigh up these slow burner games against this big, bright, brash one where you can shout and swear at your friends, right? Well, in my game, a new block type takes ages. That may be true, Ray March. This isn't about the empirical nature of one new block being the same across all products. Local multiplayer is fun. I completely agree. However, it has its place as an addition to a game. It can't be the sole thing. They might think that 3 new block types is a lot. Yeah, they might. But, you know, I'm not going to apologise for calling it out as ridiculous, right? Hello, greetings. What I meant to say was hello, Kyle? Not sure how to pronounce that. Yep. Local multiplayer probably works well in a local setting like a convention. No, it works amazingly well, and I'm testament to that as well. You know, if I go and quickly play my own video, R Games Expo, and I keep liking to say, right, my game playing this, which was on the Xbox 360. Yeah, let's get rid of the annotations. Right, I don't know if you can actually see here. No, I don't think you can. Maybe it's on the other video. Yeah, anyway, so this that's one game there. And this is mine, I think, yeah, you can just about see it, right? And I always had crowds. Look at that, back when I was slimmer. There was no teasel there. And, oh, actually, I still had a bit of a spare tyre. Oh, okay, fair enough, Harter. Yeah. But no one should be saying, like, my first thing of the past, no game should ever use it ever. Okay, all right. I think we're generally agreed on that. I just, then again, I just watched a 36-month-old Staxel vid that looks like it was made last week. yeah, I know. And all of these things, you know, like there were games where people had put, like a common thread amongst the indie games were that they, in my view, they took a really long time, right? Not just like, oh, diorama's taking twice as long as it should. We're talking about like a factor of 10 times longer. There are people who'd worked on some games for 4 or 5 years that had, it was a Unity tutorial practically, not that they were using Unity. And this was not uncommon. This was incredibly common. And it's because they're naive but willing guys, and they're probably doing it maybe even part-time. But, there was a couple, one in particular I spoke to for quite a long time, and it was, they were a 5-person team for 3 years or something like that, and they got almost nothing to show for it, and I was like, this is crazy. How is Diorama doing anyway? Yes, exactly. So I actually have a beef with this game winning the awards, right? Because short of a miracle, this is heading for 0 sales. And by 0, I mean a few hundred, like it's got now. If they nail online multiplayer, that will definitely change things. I don't think they will, based on what's going on so far. It's not even Tetris. I don't know why they've likened it to Tetris. It's not. Right. So that was my problem with the Indie Awards thing. What have I got listed now? And that wasn't the only winner where I thought, do you know what? This is not good. And what was interesting, right? So they had about 5 awards that were given to people who were showing their games, right? And I thought most of them were pretty ropey. So the people judging, I thought, were judging with the wrong criteria, right, and giving the wrong message to indies, right? But there was an award given by Starbreeze, which was, so Starbreeze is a publisher, and they were there doing pitch meetings. So they'd had some pre-agreed times where indies had booked slots and were trying to pitch games to Starbreeze Studios, right? So hunting for publishers was a very big part of this show, which is why Nick from Sony was so busy and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, so Starbreeze sponsored a Starbreeze award, which was for the game that did the best pitch. And from my point of view, those guys are the real winners of the awards, right? Because unlike all of the other awards, which are kind of aesthetic or feeling sorry or not quite understanding market, going, oh, local multiplayer is brilliant, we'll give it an award. These guys had put a pitch where someone was going to give them money, right? That's the big difference. I'm not saying these other guys didn't have money and hadn't got publishers or whatever, although it was mostly true. But it seems like I didn't fully buy into their awards, basically, because they seem to be not following really good criteria and sustainable criteria and stuff like that. And the guy that got the publisher to give them money, or girls, or whatever, they were the winners in my mind. Because that's how much does somebody like your product? Well, how much will they pay for it, right? Okay, so if you remember, I said that one of the first talks I went to was by Playground Games, was about you never get a second chance to make a first impression, right? So this resonated heavily with the demo game. So I've got some of the cards here. So I'm going to go see if I can find some of these games. So let's go and have a look. One was Orc Dentist. So I'm basically going to review the games that I can remember now. Right, this has nothing on it. Okay, well, I can't do that. Let's go on to YouTube. Orc Dentist iOS. No, okay. Well, I'm going to have a hard time talking about it, so because I can't show you anything at all about it. This was actually a cute game. So what I did was I played probably about half the games, and depending on how the people seemed to be, I would give them feedback. Now, they don't know who I am or whatever. Oh, what is this? Sorry, I'm doing that wrong. Volcanic.com. Is that going to work? No. Is someone having a laugh at me or something like these days? Oh, I tell a lie. Sorry, that is the company. Dope. Oh, this one's got a demo. So I met these two guys and I had a chat, and they were, what's the name of the game? Helmet. Oh, there's no video. Local split screen multiplayer. Well, I do intend to have local split screen multiplayer on Diorama, and it's also going to be set up for multiple monitors as well, so that you can actually do back to back or whatever. Game. Let me see. Nope, I can't. Okay, this is getting a bit annoying because these guys. I know these games have been worked on for a while, but they don't even have a website with a link to a video. I could download the demo and show it to you, but the short point is that these were one of the guys that had a game that also showed well because it was very bright, brash, and it was like Gauntlet kind of dungeon crawler, and it looked really good. I'm finishing a couch multiplayer game for PS4. Any pins on PlayStation Network? Well, PSN. I got to remember which one this is. Yeah, I mean, getting onto PSN, you need to go via a publisher or Sony, so that's a pain. The limited stuff I've heard is that actually the store isn't too great for indies generally. What remains of Edith Finch? I must look into that one. And what the hell is this? Latest movies. Oh, okay, forget that. I can't be bothered. Oh, Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time. That's very cute. Yeah, so basically, a lot of the games at Reboot demoed very badly, right? Now, there's two main reasons for that, apart from it being a bad game, right? Well, that's not the big deal. One is that some game types simply demo badly, and there was a very good example about that, which I'll come back to. But the other one is that people don't know how to make demos of games. Right, so it's not uncommon, and I used to do this on the games I worked on, which was you would create a demo game, right? You would try and front load, create a demo full of interesting scenarios, because you need to grab people, right? And the amount of people I had to sit down and they had to say, oh yeah, there's this button and there's like one of the guys turned up, and the bug, and it really annoyed me. The joypad buttons were reversed, so like the regular cancel button was action and the regular action button was cancelled. And he goes, oh yeah, it's just a bug. And I'm like, but every time I try to play this, I'm pressing the wrong button. Every other game in the universe doesn't have this. You know, this is a bad demo because of it, because I can't even play the game. I have to fight the controls, etc., etc. But people had real pacing issues, like their games were very slow to start with. So if I sit down in a really kind of fluid, frenzied and fun environment that is this Reboot Develop Conference, and it takes 3 minutes before the game starts, and you're like, this is ridiculous, right? And there was another game that was actually pretty good, but the demo didn't kind of work because it had this game where you were moving around the world and you could turn on and off gravity and stuff like that. And yet the world was all textured the same. So you completely lost where you were. And he kept having to say, oh, yeah, you need to go up there. You need to do this. And it's like, well, if you just colored it differently, I would have remembered it, because humans do have spatial awareness, but you have to help them. You can't just stick them in a kind of random box where all the walls look the same and hope people to go around. Yeah, there was a common thread of people didn't know how to do the demos. But I want to take something more from this, because based on that talk with Playground Games, where you never get a chance to make a first impression, like your first 10 minutes of the game could ideally be the demo, right? Because there's a dual benefit in making the first 10 minutes your demo. One, your game is the demo, so you don't have to make special demo builds. And secondly, you gain all the benefits of grabbing the people that own your game or are doing let's plays of your game from the start. The first 10 minutes knocks you dead and says, I can't wait to see the rest of it. And if your game doesn't do that and the first 10 minutes is drab and slow, but it gets better later on, why? Why is that? The game should be fun at all parts. It can evolve in gameplay and stuff, yeah, but it still needs to be fun, right? Unless you've got a Final Fantasy quality intro, at which point I'll completely forgive you because it's just flipping awesome. So, what other threads or themes were there? I remember from. Let's have a look. Mipumi Games. Let's see what they've got. Because I don't actually remember what these guys did. So let's go and have a look. Projects. Red Bull Minders Games, The Lion's Song, Hitman. Nope, don't remember that one. All right, Senior Policy Analyst. What the hell? At neogames.finland. Right, so go and have a look at them. They're all interesting people and stuff, but oh god. All right, moving onwards. Space Rabbits in Space. So this one, I'm pretty sure this was one of the slicker ones. So these guys were doing better. Here we go. So I played this, and it was an iOS game, so didn't massively grab me. But again, it's the sort of game that demos well. Actually, is this going to show any gameplay? Oh yeah, it is. All right, we'll leave that running. So it's a one-touch game, and it's pretty cute. Isn't it, Teasel? And it's all very slick and stuff. It's this is one of those games where they've forgotten to make the game playable by anyone less than a superhuman. Like, this gets very hard quite quickly. So, but that's fixable, right? I'm hoping they show the bit. So they've done a sort of Super Meat Boy thing here, where the game is supposed to be, you know, it's all about going fast and doing tricks and stuff like that. Well, not tricks, but tricks with the scenery on how to play it better. It's not like Tony Hawk's, and it's pretty cute actually, quite high quality. Yeah, it's nice. Fun. It's fun. It's all right. Ventilator Shark. Oh no, okay, it's not. It's not actually showing it. Damn it. So they also, do you any of you remember, what was the racing game? Trackmania, where you could actually watch replays of 100 people playing the game at once. In fact, I'm going to do that now just because it was fun. Replay, multiple cars. The 20k project, massive world record in Trackmania. Are they actually going to get this? So this is where, because different people play it single player, but then everyone, oh my gosh. But all of the replays are overlaid, and they did that, and it was very, very nice. So many games are too hard. Yes, absolutely. So this is these kind of things are ridiculous, and one of these guys is going to be faster than the rest, and it's probably the guy with the steering wheel rather than the mouse and joypad. Whoa! I just want to see one lap. And so yeah, so what was one of the other threads? I was generally shocked again by how many by how long game devs were taking on their games. I don't think I met one of the game devs that said they'd taken less than 2 years. And if I had to guess, I think the average length of what I saw at the indie game, where they were showing them, was probably 3 years with a team of 2 or 3 people, and almost none of them look like it, not by a long shot. And I don't know, like this goes back to the fostering creativity. People are allowed to do what they like. Well, that's pretty ridiculous. Do you know what? This is almost like a fluid system, isn't it? Fluid dynamics. Actually, I'm going to just flat out say I love this stuff. I absolutely love it. That they're still pouring through to the end. Yeah. Isn't this fantastic? What a brilliant showcase for a game, right? That's amazing. I love it. I love it. Trackmania, top unbelievable stunting maps. Oh no, that's not the same thing. Anyway, yeah. So I came away with this kind of bit sad or whatever, but somewhere, I've got to find Lebensborn game. So My Child Lebensborn. Yeah, this is one of the ones. So this was an interesting one. I chatted to the CEO of the company, who's probably Ellen Festoy, actually. I think I got her card because I said if I ever came across a publisher, not that I do, who was interested in these kind of games. Anyway, this surprised me, right? Because this was an exact example of the game that I should actually dislike on every single level, which is it's a pretty difficult subject. It's not necessarily engaging gameplay. It's got a very limited market. Very hard to get anybody on board. Almost certainly going to sell next to none. And yet, these games are worthy because this one has a social message and education behind it. And yeah, so pardon me. Let's see what we've got here. Actually, I'm not sure how. Yeah, I chatted to this lady.
We are Norwegian game developers, and we're making a game called My Child Lebensborn.
Actually, I'll save it. So what happened was at the Second World War, the Germans were trying to create the Uber race, right? And so what they would do is they go into other countries and they would breed with the population. Probably forced breeding. I don't know whether it was rape or whatever. I have no idea. Subtitles occluded by Cam. Oh, okay. I don't think it mattered anyway. And let me see if this has got... Yeah, okay, that's right. So I'll leave that running. And historically, the offspring of the Norwegian women and the German men were feared, despised, hated by the local population. They're a very difficult thing because the kids themselves have done nothing wrong, but clearly they're a reminder of horrible things and they're bad. And yeah, Ray March's game was just made. Let's go and check that in a minute. And so we're now on 3rd generation after that these children were born. So you know, the grandmothers of children nowadays are potentially these kind of orphans where the mother was raising them, and yeah, they are a difficult part of their country's history, and that's the name Lebensborn, and she's trying to demo a game which is about educating people about the Lebensborn, that obviously they face prejudice and hatred and it needs to stop, right? So they're making this game about this child and you're the parent of it, and he has to go to school and he gets bullied, and serious subjects, and you have different parenting styles in response. So it's very much a text-driven response. So I mean, you can do things like here you can see that he's been beaten up or bullied, so you can take him to the bathroom and give him a clean and put a plaster on, and so you'd clean him with this and you put the plaster on. There we go. And this is not a fun game, right? Yeah, they called me a Nazi kid. You're like, whoa. And I'll tell you what made this for me was the quality of the writing, right? Because they had a demo version that's kind of jumped through the year of this kid's life, but you would do it day to day and he'd get beaten up, and you have parenting styles, and you can be really angry at the kids and say, oh, who bullied my kid? I'm going to go to school. Tell me who did it. So he becomes a grass. Or you can tell them, oh, don't worry, it's not you, it's them. A very liberal, happy approach, and tell him everything about his upbringing. But then it causes problems differently. Like there's no right way to raise a child, right? And even in the cut down scenarios that they showed me, I realised I wanted to see what was happening next, because I wanted to see the outcome on this child. So it was, and I actually think she's the writer as well, this lady. And overall, it's actually a very worthy product, and I think it was quite compelling to play, right? I mean, it's not a walking simulator, but I mean, it's the interactivity is minimal, and yet the choices were meaningful, right? Which is actually that's great. Anyway, the net result is this game is dark, serious, and their target audience is teenage girls or young girls, so that they might want to bring up the boy and they'll learn a bit about the history. And it's exactly the sort of thing that's going to be fated well and be in museums, but no one's really going to buy it. But I say that, actually, let's see how much the Kickstarter it got, because this might be serious. They go, oh, okay, so not a great deal of money. It was like £12,000, right? Or 12,000 euros, or like $1, something like that. So it hasn't raised a lot, but I mean, its visibility is good, and it's going to be tied in with a thing. And this is a nice use of games. But she's demoing this thing, and I'm sympathizing with just how hard it is, right? This is a hard sell they've got going on here. So he looks like he's been beaten up again there. It's pretty. Why does everyone hate me? Pretty sod. Even that. Oh my gosh. So that was kind of a standout game for me, because it actually mattered. And they're putting a lot of love and craft into it, and it's going to fail, but for different reasons. I think they know that it's a hard sell. But they still, it's important, so they do it. It's, flipping heck, man. Tough one. Right, let's have a look at this other game, this Park-Bound Green Light, that apparently is the game. Oh, the little people running around is cute. I totally accept that. So I quite like the idea that maybe people aren't playing the same game, but it's like a hub world and everyone's in the same space but doing different things. Although it does look like they're all... Oh, you get to build it as well. Oh, I see. Well, that's pretty damn cute. Pretty damn cute. Oh, and it goes Super Monkey Ball. Does the nurturing process not get repetitive, like looking after a damaged Tamagotchi? Well, it depends, doesn't it, on, like, for the demo. I mean, the demo I actually played more than any other game there, so I was probably playing it and chatting to the lady, whose name I'm not even going to pretend I remember, for about a good 15 minutes. And I kind of wanted to know more. Now, can it sustain itself over 2 hours or 4 hours or 6? I have no idea, but it does need... to be high quality writing, because that's pretty much all it's got. So who said they were off? I've missed them, so I won't be able to say goodbye. Bye, Blackbod. Good to see you, man. Yeah. So have I got any other lists or anything of anything I wanted to talk about after that? No, Dubrovnik, very nice, very chilled. Yep, it was good. It was good. My 6-year-old would love to play that, but she wouldn't be allowed. Yeah, I mean that's it. And I was kind of sympathising with her, saying, this is a tough sell, but I kind of want you to succeed. And that wasn't something I felt for any of the others. And some of the other games were just, yeah, I don't want anyone to fail, but this goes back to like the awards. It's like we if you don't have the money to fail, right, then you need to be doing smarter things, right? We're back to Ray March's game. Oh, yeah. That's cool. Spellforce 3. No, we'll skip that. Skip that. Become registered. Yeah. What I'm actually hoping for is that other people have followed me on Twitter, but it looks like I've got no notifications. That was not fun, writing 5 tweets in a row. Yeah, I'd be interested how that writing would sustain attention. Interesting project. Well, yeah. It's all down to the quality of the writing. So one of the interesting things that came out of it was that I still don't care about audio. Didn't go to any of the audio meetings, the talks. But Jodie was going to some of the different meetings with me and was talking about them. And I didn't want to talk too much secondhand, but there were some very funny ones. She walked out of only one talk, which was by Cliffy B, because he just said some slightly annoying things. I mentioned on Discord what they were, but she came out with a very unprofessional view of him. A view of him that he was unprofessional. But actually what it's done is Jodie and I have been talking about creative, games and trying to learn lessons from this. Now, I am committed to Diorama. I love it anyway. And I think it does tick a lot of the boxes. But Jodie would like to do something a bit more like Everybody's Gone to the Rapture or whatever. Yeah, if it ever gets finished, absolutely. That's true for Ray March and his game and Diorama. And actually, I've got a notification. I don't know who they are. I won't track them down. And we've come up and oh gosh, I should. I had a bad incident where I basically upset someone and I didn't realise at the time, and I've apologised since. But yeah, that was. I was so enthusiastic about what I was talking about that I didn't fully grasp what the other person was talking about, and I just kind of stampeded over their serious point that they were making, and I just completely stupid. But that aside, that horrible thing aside, it was quite interesting picking up tidbits that were good. And feeling reinforced that we probably, if we were going to do a game that was a bit like Everybody's Gone to the Rapture or Virginia or Firewatch, that we would probably have enough to do. Basically, we actually have several really good ideas, right? So Jodie came up with an idea, and I've been picking and adding little bits to it. And if I go into London and meet this Sony guy, we're probably going to try and pitch 2 ideas at them, one which would probably be Diorama and the other would be this other game. So who knows, maybe Jodie might be helping on a game, probably not for another 6 months or whatever. I mean, I don't know, but whatever, or I'll do it and take all the credit. I reckon if you got back on Diorama, it would quickly take shape again. Well, I think so too. What was interesting for me was seeing a lot of the indie games, right? So Crow Team, actually, let's give them the credit they want, right? Let's go and have a look and see what other little games. So Crow Team, with the Serious Sam IP, have been giving other little games. Yeah, so there's... Oh, maybe I'm about to click on the wrong thing, actually. Yeah, I am. It wasn't the first encounter, the second encounter. But they fund little indie devs to make Serious Sam games. Yeah, let's try... Yep. So, Serious Sam, the random encounter. And at the indie game show, on the floor, two of the games were being sponsored by Crow Team. One which was a blocky shoot 'em up, sort of like a reverse Commando, where you're actually scrolling up the screen but you're shooting down, and the other was a kind of turn-based local multiplayer game that could be quite easily online multiplayer. And Crow Team seems to have a sense of fun about it. And this goes back to the VR conversation where they were saying, their response to me saying, I don't think there's a lot of money in VR or whatever. They were saying, we think there is, but also we're game developers. We want to do what's fun, right? So we're mad about it. So why wouldn't we do it? And you're like, yep, fair point. Only make those games if you have a top tier writer. Well, I think we can be. Oh my god, simultaneous game dev streams with Jody confirmed. Teasel's going to be the producer. Yeah, so they did that. And what else? Serious Sam Double D, which I don't know what that is. Maybe it's this one. Mommy's Best Games. Yeah, I remember them. They did some stuff on the Xbox Live Indie Games. Very high quality, but I just couldn't get their style. Just couldn't do it. Something so alienating about their style, and it's very unfortunate because they're very good at what they do. So Crow Team do seem... I thought they... Because I chatted to one of their lead guys specifically about VR and the influencer problem, and they just gave very good answers and very relatable answers, right? So... they clearly do okay financially, but they choose to spend some of that money doing fun things rather than just their core business. So, yeah, they must have sponsored about 5 or 6 indie teams games based on Serious Sam, of which we've just seen 2. I don't think... So I don't think any of the games that I saw... To be honest, I don't think any of the games I saw apart from that Lebensborn I've actually managed to spot on here. But they were a good bunch. Like, yeah, whatever. They're a good bunch. Videos. Serious Sam Indie Games. Reboot Develop. Serious Sam VR. Nope, can't see it. All right, so is there anything else? Have you guys got any questions for me? Only make those games if you have a top tier writer. Right, so I don't know. We're only going to make those games if we think we can do as good a job as we can and it's a reasonable compared to competitors. But I mean, I don't know. I think writing and emotional stuff for Jodie and I is very interesting, and we're analytical enough and understand about screenwriting and stuff like that. So we've got a basic there, but we certainly can't say we've got a history of doing these things because we don't, right? But at the same point, you need to start somewhere. You said you had something to say about Talos 2 when I sarcastically asked about it. Yeah, so somebody asked if Talos 2 was going to be VR, and they said no. And they go, oh, well, Talos 2 confirmed, etc. But I think it's been publicly announced anyway. But yeah, they're kind of working on it. He didn't say a release date, but the big deal is that they definitely want to do more. In fact, let's go and see if Talos 2 has been announced. Discreetly announced. Let's actually get this back to... Oh, okay. So that was ages ago. Yeah. So they didn't talk. They didn't tell me about any content, but so they're still working on bits of Talos Principle 1. So there's going to be some Talos VR. Let's see if that's been announced. Oh, it does already, apparently. Oh, that's no, that doesn't seem right. No, something's not quite right there. Something doesn't match up. So I must have not asked him the right questions, or I've misremembered it. Well, Talos 2, yeah. So they are working on it. Yeah. So I don't really have much to say actually. Wow. Improve the appearance of soft shadows on vegetation. Okay, fair enough. But yeah, it was interesting to have a chat because Talos Principle cropped up when I was chatting to Jonathan Blow, and we both kind of agreed on the same point, which was like the puzzles themselves didn't introduce enough, and were like once you've solved the problem, it should be easy to do. But actually, the Talos Principle, there was so much inventory management, picking up, dropping, that actually became not fun, right? And actually, the most fun that him and I both had was actually in the meta puzzles or the hidden secret ones, which would sometimes abuse rules from other separate puzzles, which was great. Like the idea of having just a straightforward set of puzzles clearly doesn't interest Jonathan Blow, and it didn't in The Witness. They were all their learning, their epiphanies, and that. I can't rate it highly enough. In fact, while I'm talking, I'm actually going to go and load The Witness and start a new game because I want to go and see about that puzzle that he gave an explanation for, which I didn't know. So I want to go and check that. Right, where is it? The Witness. Right, let's watch. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell him off for having this really annoying. Yeah, it's happened again. Oh, come on, Mr. Witness. Get me on there. I don't know what's happened. It looks like it's crashed, to be honest. No, it hasn't. Oh, look, there's... Oh, well. All right, well, that's just spoiled the environmental puzzles. So I need... This is a good thing to see if I even remember where everything is. Yeah, I do. I don't know. It's actually, do you know what? Chatting to Jonathan Blow was very interesting because I think I'm an all-round decent developer, right? And the circles I move in, like the Twitch development scene and online, actually is not great quality, in all fairness. So I'm I feel quite high up in that pecking order, which is a bit ridiculous because you should generally be judged on results anyway, right? But, oh look, anybody would think there was one there as well. What am I trying to say? And actually, Jonathan Blow, he's been someone that he's kind of been on the radar for, oh yeah, see. Okay, let me see if I can, do you know what? Start a new game. I think I've just wiped my entire game. Oops. But I need to get out of here. Oh, dearie me. What is going on with this? Settings. Urgh. Resolution dynamic? Really? What is that all about? Ah, we get it. Hey, excellent. All right. I've forgotten how to do this. And then, you know, chatting to people like Tim Kaine as a developer and some of these other, the Legend of Grimlock guys and stuff. And do you know what? It reminds me that actually I'm actually not that good. I'm not. But I'm certainly good enough. But I also know that, you know, this kind of pick your battles thing. Yeah. Like I couldn't make The Witness. I couldn't come up with the idea. It's just too it's just too out there for me. And so I have to, and I want to respect the people that can do these things. And in the same way that I said, I kind of respect, I respect Naughty Dog, but not quite in the same way. Because actually, I think given a large enough team and stuff and hiring the right people, I kind of could make something that was close to that. Whereas this is all about the ideas, and I really don't think I could do something like this. I forgot that I had to do this intro. I'm a horrible developer, I would say. I mean, I'm still young, but I imagine there is still room for improvements on my... Well, yeah, I mean, anybody who's less than 30 years old has still got, you know... You can still be rubbish. If you're 30 and you've been doing it as a job for a while, you probably need to be fairly good by now. I don't think that's unfair to say. Okay. Actually, I forgot about all of this. So what I was planning on doing was something quick, and I'm now clearly not going to be able to. So this one's teaching you about having multiple entrances, which means can't go from there. All right, where's the other one? And then I'm going to run over to that to the shadow area, and this will be, oh crikey, I've got to go up over there. There we are. And this now has multiple exits. That's what this one's showing me. Oh, okay. Okay, I vaguely remember this. I've got to work out which one of these exits I actually want him to activate. Yeah, so you can only do one at a time, right? Is that the one that goes back to the door? Yep, all three are lit over there. Right. Bartry says, okay, I'm not sure what you mean. Are you off? All right. Right, now I'm through. So let's go. Oh my goodness. I'm remembering so many cool things about this. Right, that door's not open. Oh, this has got... Yeah, I'm not going to try and remember the rules. But it's funny, like at one point I was talking in a group of people, and I said... like he was talking, like Jonathan Blow in the group was talking about ditching OpenGL and there's a better API. And I was sort of like, well, you know, porting these things isn't that big a deal. And I you know, and I wouldn't, you know, and I didn't see anything that was so amazing in the witness that it required in, you know, you don't need a massive OpenGL expert. What you're doing is rendering a lot of static scenery very, very fast. Okay, and that's kind of a known problem, and not stressing your APIs that far. And Jonathan, he took a bit of, I wouldn't say he took exception to it, but he did make the point of saying, well, actually, we're not AAA, but we're doing quite a lot with our rendering, and you know, so he would class it as AA. Right, so here we are. Here's the issue, right? That's the end puzzle. So what does that mean? Right, so we do actually have two things coming out. Yeah, oh, Teasel's back. Well, I'm not too good at game deving, and I'm too old. Bartry, you're a decent programmer, man. That's not the worry, right? Excuse me, Teasel. Did you read the blog about the witness rendering? I think I did, but I'm going to go and have a look. Well, part of the problem was that they... well, whatever. I should rather than talk, I should go and read it. But where did it start? Somewhere around here. Now, I wonder if this is the... Teasel, you're sitting right in the way. Actually, where does this even start? Cat, where does this start? Right, there's some panels there. So this is interesting. Maybe the intention was that your first experience of this was that, and then there were the two cables coming out. Thing is, the cables are actually not very obvious. Maybe that's, but so where would you be encountering this from? There's a path here. And that's not lit up. That hasn't even started. So that must be the end. Well, his crew has a lot of experience with tools for AAA. I thought their main the graphics guy was like a junior, but he was just very, very good. I'm not sure I'm supposed to be going with this. It is leading away. Oh yeah, I forgot there's actually no jump in this. Where's the first sodding problem? Oh yeah, there you go. You can already see there's the shadows and you've got to be in the right position because they're shiny screens. Where does this start? Maybe it's down here. That looks lit, doesn't it? Okay, so this is interesting. This is like the... I don't get it. Teaser, what's up, babes? Of old Gold Source style bunny hopping, yeah. So maybe this is the first one. It is the first one you encounter that's lit, but I wonder how you were supposed to know this was shadows. I don't know, maybe it's just that this one's actually really obvious. It kind of is, right? Alright, well let's play through this. So we've got one starting, and I'm intrigued at looking at this. There we go. So that's an interesting one. Yep. So that's the first one. This teaches you about shadows, and that is fairly obvious, right? Excellent. The second one is teaching you that the shadows are there, but when you step into it, oh, it might actually, yeah, it might overlap it, so you have to do it from memory. So I'll actually do this further away. Okay. Excellent. Right, now you're talking. Alright, so now we've got to remove other things so that we can see the actual shadows. What I find interesting with this is like tracing back to see which bits actually were influencing it. Alright, there we go. Let's just double check. No, I'm standing in the way. That's too bright for me to see. Hopefully that door won't close on me. Or if it does, it's a period of time long enough. You sod bag. I was right as well. What's amazing, Ray March? Oh. So yeah, so that's what that has just taught you. And this is what I mean about, this is just excellent. It's teaching a discrete rule. Please, Ray March, keep watching. Yeah, so I mean, this is going to be spoilers, but this teaches you that the branches get in the way, but the metal stuff doesn't, right? That's an important rule that's coming up, right? So let's go to the next one. Right, what have we got here? Well, remember that lesson we just learned? This looks like it's unsolvable, except some of this comes from metal. So the vertical ones are metal. So, okay, so now I'm going to try this. Oh, look, it works, right? Metal bad, wood good. All right, so let's have a look. Oh, there's some horizontal metal now. And it even starts there. Right, now, where's the exit? Is that right? Yep. Hey, okay, open that. Excellent. Right, we've still only got the one pass, so I'm still waiting. Oh gosh, okay, that's getting a bit, it's getting a bit bigger. So there is a metal pipe there, a big fat metal pipe. Yeah, not really sure. Not really sure. Okay, got it right. It's I think anything kind of orthogonal is probably bad. Ah, interesting. Alright, so I've got it wrong. So which of these are metal? Kind of looks like all of it is actually. I can't just do that, can I? I can. Okay. All right, now we're getting more interesting again because we've got diagonal lines. So right, now I'm having to think which might be. Yep. What happens if you get it wrong? Oh, the puzzle just fails. Ah, so this is the bit that I missed. Do you see that? So the problem was I didn't realize there was a switch in the puzzles. But here, he's actually... No, it's actually fairly obvious. Look, this splits in two. It does split in two. Okay, so... And I think this is because, again, I was still learning about the rules, but I never thought, really, to check that. That wouldn't have registered. But the fact that this splits in two and has two different sets of puzzles is real. So I'm going to follow this one because I think it's the shorter route, and we'll see what lessons it teaches me. Ah, there you go. So this path is teaching me to follow the shadows. God damn it, I love this game. This used to be an indie dev. Yeah, well, I'm doing this to kind of, and this is a bit rough, but I'm going to stop once I get to the end of this puzzle chain. Right, okay, we've lost it. Oh, no, there it is. All right, fair enough. All right, this is getting a bit ropier. Oh, damn you. Oh, no, there it goes. Right, where's the exit? Whoa, that's pretty crazy. That's getting a bit out of shape. Yep, done it. Right, where's the next one? Over there. Oh, hello. Where's the exit? And then, okay. Ray March, basically, yes, it does. Yes. And I've chosen the wrong passage, clearly. Okay, so this is going all the way here. And look, so this side has opened. God damn it. He's right. He's so right. Okay, so Ray March. Now you'll see the bits. Anyway, I'm almost tempted to play through the whole game again. Not now. That would be crazy. Right. So if we look at this puzzle, which is partly covered, right, we can't see the pattern here. But that's okay because actually we've got it here. But notice this is still the positive aspect where we stay in the areas. So if I can kind of... There's no way that this links up here, so it has to go here. Right. So what I'm guessing is this is... Oh, I've fluffed that up. There we go. So now I'm having to attack this from a different angle. Right, but again, I'm having to rely on on manually offsetting these shadows, and it gets crazier now. So you can actually see this shape here. This is quite tough. So there's 3 bits on the left, so we can work out... In fact, where's the exit? The exit's on the left. So it looks to me like I need to go there, use that bit, across the top, down and around, and then left. Okay, so let's go. No, what did I... Oh, it needs to come out one. Ah, damn it. So if you get the puzzle wrong, nothing bad happens. Not really. There are some where there's kind of minor penalties and it will reset things, but earlier in the chain. Ray March. Well, hang on, it gets harder. So this one now... Now we're at an angle. Right? Now it's getting a bit awkward. So let's have a look. This goes here. Oh, gosh. Is it like that? Oh, damn it. I'm in a slightly the wrong position. Okay, so we go here. We go up. No, I got that wrong. Yeah. Right, now what the hell? Right, so this doesn't make sense anymore because this start position can go here, but the shadow's off. Right, so this part, this can't be correct. But it's okay because look, we've got a different start position there. So this part of the shadow is okay. And then we need to follow the bit that's over here as an extension of this. So we've now got two kind of bits of indirection or whatever, or patterns to follow. So let's try that. So it does two across, it goes up one, it goes across. And how many does it go across? It looks like it goes two up right there. Right. Yep, it's getting tougher. Oh, gosh. What? Where the hell is that one? Right, this is... There it is. So it's not even on this one. I'm having to look up here. So what is that showing? It's kind of... I have to kind of trace this shape here. Eek. Okay, let's... Oh no, I'm going to get this wrong. Down to, then left. Is there going to be one where you have to look at the thing that actually casts a shadow and do the flipping in your head? No, there isn't. But that sort of puzzle exists elsewhere. It's a whole other set of puzzles. Right, this is another offset one. It must be because look, we've got that down there. Oh man! And the thing is, this puzzle is stretched as well. And yet, if I want to look at it properly, I have to. My shadow gets in the way, so I have to. So it goes along the bottom. And then it kind of zigzags on its way up. Well, I think... Is it that? Yep. That was a bit of a guess. Right, where's it gone? Oh, sods. I've lost it. Oh no, here it is. Right. Oh my goodness. So I can kind of make that out, but not really much. No, that's wrong. So I'm seeing this here, and I'm making an assumption that this bridges across here. The core mechanic of a desert area. But then it was the bit underwater, underneath, is this diorama. No, it's not. The core mechanic of this area. Yeah, so when you get under the temple, then I found that a bit harder. But do you agree that this is teaching you to solve the puzzle with one of the doors closed? Like if you only did this branch and not the other one? Well, I think that's the problem, right? Is that me being the completist, for some reason I didn't do that. And it wouldn't surprise me. So what would have changed this, right, Bartwe, what would have helped is that is if the door opening had been bigger and more visible, right? Because my completionist tendencies doesn't means exactly that. I for some reason I managed to spot all these things, and I finished all of these before I even knew there was an end point, right? So this kind of opening the two gates thing, it was totally lost on me because I happened to approach it from a different mindset, and I sort of feel like I think with a bit of tweaking I could have got it right, but whether that means it's better or worse, I don't know. I mean, it's better for me, but my personal gut feeling is it could have done with being a bit more obvious, like for example, instead of them lighting up, like opening the gate, perhaps they could have lit up a panel either side, which meant that when you went to the final bit over there, that you directly saw the correlation of one half of the patterns with one half of the gate. So there you go. Right, but let me see what I'm doing wrong here. I'm not really sure I can see that. I've kind of got a problem here because, like, why is that shadow so bad quality? Is that better? No, it's still blurring. Okay. So what am I trying to see here? Yeah, there's no way I can. So where does this go? Does this go up and around? I guess I'll have to make that assumption, right? So assume it goes up, around. Yeah, that was fine. Plus, notice I'm playing it with the sound down, which doesn't help. Right. See, this one's actually a bit easier for me, I find. So let's go up. Oh, hang on a sec. How do those line up? That can't possibly. Hang on a sec. This has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 horizontal lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay, that's the bottom line there. You crafty little sod bag. So it needs to be like that kind of thing that I'm solving. You clever git. Alright, so we do this. We go all the way across. So this comes back, up and over. And I'm now getting a bit lost. That's not going to work, is it? Oh, flipping heck, that was lucky. Yeah, Gaitan Cass, thank you very much. Apart from the fact I've said your name wrong, but thank you very much for thinking that was even remotely possible. Okay, so we've got something up there. Oh no, I've already solved that one. So where does this cable go? Yeah, I solved that one. Okay, so this actually is leading. Yeah, okay, so this has completed the other half of the puzzle. Yeah, it has. Oh, okay, I think this is where the cables, because they got quite close to each other. But if we follow this round, that should have, yeah, it's opened the other side. So I can see where he's come from. As in, this has broadcast the two different sides. So this side is the avoid. And then it passes over here. But yeah, for what it's worth, Ray March, I did start for here. I was looking up at the sun and all of these shapes to try and work out if what may or may not be deliberate. So let's do this now that I know this is the correct solution. If I don't get this right first time, I will batter myself. But no, there we go. I got it right. So that's going to open up. Everyone's happy. Well, there you go. So I think him explaining it to me now means I can see it in retrospect. I still personally feel it's a bit unfair. Maybe that's just pride. But actually, I think this left and right, like for example, if this didn't just open the gate, if this didn't just open it, but up here there became a little panel, one of those just ones where you drag down and it opens it, then it would have made obvious that the left-hand side of this route opens the left-hand side of the door. But as I said, the paths aren't totally separate, really, I think. Because if we go back to where they split, all right, so we're splitting into a left and a right, but actually these ones go quite close, right? That's one part of it. And I think what's happened is I've run through here and I've just seen some green lines, and it just didn't sink in. It wasn't, I think it could have been far clearer without giving the game away and feeling like it was a cheat. But my point to him was that out of like 400 puzzles I've played, I was only really annoyed by one. That's all right. That is all right. And one of the things, when I was trying to solve this puzzle and I didn't get it, I was trying to position my player shadow. And of course, actually, that was a total mistake on my part, because the puzzles had earlier taught me that the player shadow was irrelevant. And I carried on trying to do something, which was pretty darn stupid. Now, if I stand over here, there we go. We'll just do that while we're at it. And there's one over here. There you go, guys. So I am definitely going to finish this about now. That looks like there's another one over here, doesn't it? Or does it? No, it probably isn't, actually. I think they're misleading, the little swines. Oh yeah, Raymarch, are you still there? Because these puzzles have got you looking through things and stuff. This was another particular favourite one of mine, because they were environmental puzzles. So these ones, right, let's go and open that. Yeah, so these puzzles I absolutely love, and I wish I was that smart. That doesn't seem to have opened. Why not? I don't know. Why is that not opened? Oh, because there's one in there. That's interesting, because both of them needed to be there. I'll tell him if I see him. I bought the game myself. Okay, well I'll do one or two here, and then I'll stop it. So I won't describe what I'm doing. So this is interesting, because there's aspects of the puzzles that, like this puzzle, for example. I mean, this is actually just a small slice of genius, right? Because there's multiple ways of solving this, so I can open this here and here, but I can't drag over to the other, I can't go up and then right? And yet, if I want to connect that, I move perspective, and that is something that is just unbelievably awesome. But anyway, let's try opening this gate somewhere and see what there is to solve. Right, that doesn't work. And I think it's because, oh yeah, sorry. One of the other puzzles. I won't say how I know why that didn't work. Right, I'm pretty sure I should be opening some windows here. Oh yeah. So it is opening. It is opening. Oh, look, there's a little shape of a person there. Right, anyway, that's not seeming to do what I was expecting. That's opened something else, but I'm going to go around a different side now. So these gates are going to close. Out, see you, Ray March. Yeah, I'm just playing the game now, aren't I? Because I enjoy it. There you go. That's what's so cool about this. Oh, didn't like that. Oh, it didn't, did it? Why not? Oh, it's gone black. I wonder what's happened there. All right, guys, I'm going to stop playing. It's now midnight, so I'm going to go to bed. What can I say? Thanks for watching. If there's anything else anybody wants to say, make it soon. Otherwise, I'm going to sit here for the next 5 days working out why this particular puzzle doesn't work. And I've worked it out. I know why it doesn't work. But I am surprised. Was this a punishment that I have to restart them? I can't remember. I can't remember. Somebody said about a punishment. Yeah. So that's right. So it relights it. I wonder why he did that in some places. We go ziggy zaggy. Oh, okay. No, I got it wrong. All right, guys. I miss you streaming more often. When's the next stream? So I've got to catch up on my other project, but next week I will stream. I will definitely stream next week. Oh, what's going on with Twitter? Oh, okay, I see. All right, guys. The only follow-up to this is when I get some figures from Becky, who's actually responded. And yeah, about the figures for using these companies who my other project. Yeah, so that's my contracting work. Basically, I've got contracting work to finish. All right. Becky was the woman who works for GameSite and was going to get me the figures to do with the return on investment of influencer paying. Right? So that's good. Teasel's done a runner. Do you know what? I miss streaming. I really do. But what's the usual things? There's the Discord. There's Twitter. No, I shouldn't be streaming the other project work. No. Guys, I love you very much. Unless you ditched out early, so pretend I hate Ray March. What a git. All right. I should get my hair cut and everything and look good. All right, guys. I shall see you. I'll see you next week at the latest. I might do some fun streaming depending on what else there is. I've got games to play, stuff like that. All right. Thanks for watching. Please follow me here, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers, guys.